call to order this charter review meeting on July 24th at 5:36 p.m.
Excellent.
Do we want to do a roll call? Okay. Myron, Hector, Hannah, Luann is not here. I'm here. Carol, Mr. Brumman, Doug, Dennis, and then our alternate is not here. Will or Mark are not here. So, all right. And do you want us to start with old business?
Yes, here's the way I'd like to run the meeting tonight. I'd like to first start by going back over the comments from last week and reviewing the changes that I wrote to implement the requested revisions that you guys have to make sure that we're all on the same page, all right? After that, we'll jump into the next set of articles. This first part of the meeting, though, hopefully will go quickly, because hopefully we're just confirming what we did last week. And you guys can help that move along quickly if you'll agree to one thing for me. Let's not relitigate anything that we decided last time, all right? Because if we voted last time to change something, and you come back and you go, yeah, but I don't think we really want to change it, we will literally be here all night, okay? If we start back over with Article 1, it'll take us forever. So let me just run through the changes that were made as a result of last time, and then we can move into starting into the new stuff. The first change here is in section 4, and that was to delete all of the sections that are not consistent with state law. I printed that one out for you guys in advance so y'all would see how I'm doing that, so I'm confident that that is correct according to the way that we proposed it last week. And what I'm doing in my document is I'm clicking resolve that thread so that I'm not seeing the comment in the margin anymore. So to me, once it's resolved, you guys are agreeing that it's okay. I'm just going to roll through them like that, and you guys are going to have to raise a hand and object if you see something that doesn't look like it's set the way you guys asked it to be. The next comment has to do with the city website and bulletin located outside of City Hall, but notice that is within something that has already been deleted, so that comment doesn't need anything done to it. And for some reason it's not going to let me delete that comment. Okay. That is all. There we go, resolved. Good. The next comment is cleaning up section D, and it also is something that is just minor cleanup. And you'll see in paragraph D there, it did say annexation by any other method, and now it just says by any method provided by law. We don't need the word other because all of the others above have already been removed. Same thing with the word also and the final sentence of that section. They're just removed because all of the other options have already been taken out. The comment from Ms. Chacon regarding contracting boundaries was voted on and failed, so no change there. I can mark that one resolved. The next comment was a cleanup with regards to just the word here and above. And then, Elise, your comment, public improvements and utilities, something that would ensure the timelines, the utilities to all lots. We had marked that, come back to it. But then we later had a more thorough discussion in another section of the charter, and I think decided specifically not to do something.
Yeah,
Is it okay to mark this comment resolved?
We had it on here, move to utilities section. That's what so yeah.
Move to utilities?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm just going to mark it that way here.
That's what I have written.
My computer is behaving very oddly tonight, and I don't know why. Would you mark that as come back to it later? it's in paragraph.
Okay.
There it goes, okay. Move to 6. Okay. Miscellaneous, that one got no action, so that can be resolved. The next comment had to do with Brenda's question about filing in other counties, and we changed the wording to say that the original of the plat will be filed in the deed records of the county in which the largest portion of the property is located, and it should say, and copies filed in this portion of it here. And copies filed in needs to stay in there. All right. There was further discussion after the meeting between Brenda and myself regarding multiple counties. I think the discussion we had that night, we didn't include the concept of the largest portion of the county is where the original is filed. We just talked about filing it in the county where the property was located with copies in others. The change that we discussed afterwards means that this only applies in sections where the property is sitting on the county line. Does that make sense? So if the property is entirely located in Sandpack County, it will only be filed in Sandpack County. It won't need to be filed with Nueces and Aransas. But if the property is straddling Sandpack and Aransas, and you look at where is the largest portion of that property, and if it's in Sandpack, then the original will get filed in Sandpack and a copy in Aransas, and vice versa. She said, and Brenda, correct me if I'm wrong. Is she sitting back here? Yeah. Correct me if I'm saying any of that wrong. She said that is the current practice and the way those counties are currently operating. And so this change would implement what they are currently doing. Is that language acceptable to everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then I'm going to mark that one resolved. The next comment is a change that passed to eliminate all of the very specific language that was previously in the powers of the city and leaving only the first sentence. You'll note that the way that I implemented that change, we can include this as part of the Proposition A, remember, is to delete things that have been superseded by state law or duplicative of state law. And so this would be a Prop A measure. The next one is removed because that section has been deleted. The next section is also removed based on the prior comment. The next comment was from Doug, and there was no motion or action taken on that one, so there's no text there either. The next comment had to do with, was from Hector. This was term limits. This is something that was not decided last week. We tabled this item to come back to it. So, Madam Chair, would you like to discuss that now, or would you like me to finish going through this process first?
Why don't we finish going through this and then we'll...
Then we'll circle back to the ones that still need to be resolved? Okay.
Yeah.
No motion on changing from at-large to ward, so that one is resolved. Maintaining residency and primary residency, we decided no action, resolved that one. All right. Is this a new comment?
The highlighted ones are new.
Highlighted one is new. Okay. So Madam Chair, this is one that you sent in, but after we had already discussed Article 1.
Yes, it was sent to me by citizen suggesting that we pay council and the mayor for regular meetings, $50 a meeting, and no more than $100 a month.
So I would like for you to have a discussion with the committee about whether or not we want to impose the deadlines that we talked about before. In other words, if we don't have the comments by the time we get to the meeting, we don't want to circle back and go back to things. Or do we want to continue to allow these comments from citizens? Again, my concern is if we keep coming back to Article 1 every meeting, we'll never get to Article 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But I want to hear from you guys. If y'all want to go ahead and accept these comments and consider them tonight, I'm happy to do it.
Let's do a quick discussion real quick. I mean, I personally think that I want to hear from if the citizens bring something, that's what we're here is to represent, but I also understand the time factor. So I don't know if it's more conductive to do it like as we go like this, or to save all those that come in and do them when we do the final review as something to add in. I don't know, what do y'all think? Or do y'all think that we shouldn't even be
I mean,
entertaining
the issue of
how many?
if we open the floodgates now, they're open.
Yeah.
And I like the notion of being able to, because if we go over this one now, that means in the future, we have to go back over.
Again.
Yes. And would it be acceptable to just round up those comments of, oh, they commented and we heard this news after the fact, we've discussed it, and then just discussed it at the end of that last meeting? That sounds reasonable to me.
I agree with that.
I'm agreeable to that.
Everybody? Okay, so do we need to make a motion on that, or just
This
agree?
is a chair discretion.
Okay.
You have the authority to say, we're going to do this now versus we're going to do that later. And so if you're confident that you've got consensus of your committee and you're ready to move on, I can take that direction.
Yep, let's just, anything that comes in new, we'll keep notes on, and we'll put it at that last review. Obviously, some of them will be quick discussions, so hopefully they'll all be quick discussions, but we won't let's keep moving forward.
Absolutely. And I like the way that Ashby has it highlighted here. That just tells us we can skip over tonight all the comments that are highlighted that have come in afterwards, and we know that is a last night discussion kind of topic.
That would be great.
Okay, great. All right. Motion for the mayor to vote only as a tiebreaker failed, so that's resolved. All right, next we get to Mayor Pro Tem. There was quite a bit of discussion about the Mayor Pro Tem. There are several comments here tied to the Mayor of the Pro Tem. Actually, I guess it's just two of them. One of them is that the Mayor Pro Tem can only be Mayor Pro Tem for 1 year. Another is...
One term.
One term. That's a great clarification. Let's make sure we get that right. The second comment was that if the mayor and the mayor pro tem are both absent, the most senior council member will act there. And then my comment, which is the third, is that we change the wording so that it happens at the first meeting after swearing in new council members. So you corrected me. Let's read the language specifically, because I understood that the discussion was that it would only be 1 year. And so I wrote, the member of council so elected shall serve as mayor pro tempore only until the next regular city election, and thereafter until the subsequent mayor pro tem is elected. There's a typo there.
There is, I'm correcting it right now on my end.
Okay. So the effect of that is that it's not a 2-year council member term. It's until the next election, which happens every year. So
Okay, so
it's 1 year. What was the intent of that discussion last week?
Experience, to give everybody that needed experience to basically experience. We all spoke about, what was it, 2 years? Everybody needs at least one term to really.
Yeah, we
You
did
know?
term because of being able to give everyone a chance, and if we give them only one term, if we give them only 1 year, that wouldn't work. Or we could put on their 2-year max or something. I don't know if we need to change it because of the election. I'm not sure how you did that. On your part.
So I've seen it written several different ways. The way that it's written here, it would it would result in a one-year term for the mayor pro tem every time, because you have a new election next year. I've seen it written, once they get appointed mayor pro tem, they stay mayor pro tem until their next election. In other words, for the duration of their term, all right? Which can result in some odd things, because then you don't know until you pick mayor pro tem whether that's a 1 year or a 2 year appointment, because it depends on whether they just got reelected or not,
For
right?
simplicity, would it be easier just to leave it as the 1 year, but then put a 2 year max?
No, because we'd have to have another election, or,
There's no election every year.
or not election, but another appointment.
If
Go through
it's a
the
one,
process again.
if it's a 1 year term, what do you mean by 2 year max?
I mean, when you were saying 1 year, because like, we had one term on here, which would be for 2 years.
Right.
But then you were saying for 1 year, if it was 1 year, they only get 1 year, we just say they're pro tem for 1 year, but you can only have a 2 year max.
Wouldn't that
The mayor-
turn on the math on
Like a
that?
term limit for it, basically. The term limit would be 2 years.
Only 4 city council members, if somebody's been there for 6 years, is the math really, I don't think the math on that.
That's why I would say we need to have, they gotta be able to at least do 2 years.
But is that enough? So if we do 2, 4, 6, and we got one person who's been there for 6 years but already done there 2, then we have, what, 2 years without having an option of a mayor pro tem?
No, you've got the other councilman that would be able to.
No, I'm saying, so, okay, I guess it matters if we decide on the terms that we talked about in the email, where it's 2, 4, 6.
Oh, yeah,
And we
yeah.
have 4 council members, so if they do 2 years per, am I doing the math wrong here, or you
No,
understand?
you're
what I'm
not.
saying?
You're exactly right.
Okay, so we
right?
have a 2 year,
Right.
So it's,
Assuming
so it's
somebody-
1 year at a time. You go 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, and then 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. Everybody's hit their
2 year
2 year
max.
max. What do you do then if we don't have a new council member on council yet?
Gotcha. With 3 years would cover it then, right? We just do it as a.
Well, you just roll again. 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year.
Yeah, but no, but they can come back, but that's what I'm saying, like, give them where they have the extra years or
Yeah.
whatever.
The
I
way,
just don't want it to be where someone's a councilman and they're pro tem, their entirety, or it's what happened this last time. It's really to prevent what happened this last.
I think we already did
The
that.
last
though,
2
with the-
years in a row.
Yeah, where it had always been kind of just an unspoken rule,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden it became who can speak the fastest and
Mhm.
quickest at a meeting, and it was just to eliminate that, and then also give that experience to each council person to be able to find out if they even want to have the responsibilities of mayor.
Yeah.
That was the whole purpose of why we were gonna do it.
Yeah.
As far as,
so the way that it's written right now,
yeah,
it would be 1 year as mayor pro tem, and then at the next year's election, we would have to choose someone different to be mayor pro tem. So it would, for example, just go from Carrie to Jason, right? The next year, we would have to choose someone else, and it could go right back to Carrie again, or it could go to someone else, right? The way it's written right now, there is no limit to how many times someone can be mayor pro tem, but it does have to change person every
Right.
year.
I know, from the way I used to get it was whoever got the most votes in an election would be the mayor pro tem. And for the last 2 or 3 years, that seemed to change because of the 3 women we had up here.
and I'm fine with doing it that way. It's just making sure that it's able to change, that we're not getting this,
Yeah,
you know, I mean,
And follow it.
yeah, and it gets,
Follow it. If we're gonna put it there.
so, I mean, I'm fine with either doing that, or we do it, I think part of that's gonna come to, with the term limits too, like, if there's a mayor pro tem and we do, I'm just trying to think how we could do this strategically, if they're only gonna have a 1 year, if their term for pro
Yeah.
tem is only for 1 year.
Yeah.
When it was on here, and I think we were thinking 2 years, like their whole term, you know what I mean? Would be
Right.
for that. So if,
Here is a problem that can develop if, what I'm understanding y'all saying is you want to codify the practice, which has been the person who received the highest number of votes winds up being the mayor pro tem, okay? Here is one problem that can result from that. I don't remember who runs, and that we have 2 people run, and then we have 2 people plus the mayor run. Then we have 2 people run, right? So in year A, when we have 2 council members running, are you only choosing the person who got the highest number of votes that year, or are you also looking back at the prior year?
that year.
just in that year. So only the two people who were up for election that year are eligible to be mayor pro tem?
Yes. That's the way it's been until they
Okay.
were, like I said, they changed it about 3 years in a row.
Okay, so that's the system that y'all understood was a matter of practice. That's what was being done previously, and that's what y'all want to codify?
I have a question. Did we not discuss last time, did we put a motion or pass something last time about the process of electing mayor pro tem?
We did.
To ensure what happened this past year didn't happen again?
We
Or-
did.
We did.
But it doesn't solve the problem that we're discussing right now. Let me explain what we did last time. Last time, if you look at the first sentence that has the red change in it, this was my comment, and that is that we don't elect mayor pro tem until the newly elected are sworn in and seated, so that they have a chance to run, right? One of the complaints this year was that there was an attempt to elect the mayor pro tem that failed.
Right.
And everybody said, well, you violated the charter because it says it must be at the first meeting. Well, we didn't even try to do it at the first meeting because the guy hadn't been seated yet. And, we hadn't canvassed the election. So this fixes that part of the problem. It does not fix the part of the problem where the mayor says, I nominate somebody, second, all in favor say aye, no discussion, and it's just like she called it a race to see who can nominate the fastest, right? It doesn't solve that part of the problem. So if you want to solve that part of the problem, that is different than what was discussed last time.
Can we, is this lot, I'm just trying to throw something out there. What if we just said no one person can serve mayor pro tem consecutive years? It just has to switch somebody every single, you know what I mean?
That's what
I like
this
that.
change says.
I'm good with that.
I'm liking that. Giving everybody some experience, we're avoiding some problems that are coming across,
We have the same
there won't be no
individuals
vote on
that are
it.
gonna
It's
come
already
around
gonna-
again eventually.
We know who's gonna be
Will it
mayor pro
automatically
tem.
just rotate, or will they still vote each time?
They will still have to nominate and vote each time on who is mayor pro tem, but
But it
it's
cannot be the
written
same
right
person
now that they
consecutively.
cannot, this proposed language
Yeah.
says may not serve consecutive terms.
Yeah, and it could be, like you said, Jason and Kerry, they could go back and forth because maybe the other two don't ever want to be pro tem.
Right.
But you're saying I would give that option. Hopefully that's not the case, but
Yeah,
And
hopefully.
if we do, when we go back to term limits, put those in, they can't volley for that long, so.
All right. Because of the level of discussion here, I would like the confidence of knowing that the committee supports the language that's written in the document right now. So if you wouldn't mind calling for a vote on that.
Sure.
A formal vote to say that Section 5, Mayor Pro Tem, the language written there reflects the intent of the committee.
okay. All those in favor of approving Section 5, Mayor Pro Tem, the wording being correct as it is written?
Second.
Aye.
All good.
All in favor, sorry.
Yeah, got
All those
it.
opposed?
A motion, second.
Thank you. That provides me the clarity so that I know what exactly to keep in the document. All right. The next document has to do with vacancies and forfeitures of office. And our notes say that there was a motion here that passed, but there were several discussions here, and I didn't know what to implement here.
I made a note on mine, because we broke it up. The part that was passed was that section that says violates any express prohibition of this charter, fails to maintain or fails to attend 3 regular city council meetings in a row, or 6, was it 6? I wrote something over it. Regular meetings in 1 year. That passed, and then we tabled that second paragraph, the filling of vacancies. A vacancy in the city council shall be filled for the remainder of the unexpired term. That whole point, I put no action there and then table, so I don't know.
Yeah, I have number 2, I put crime of moral turpitude. We were supposed to find out what that was, and we were gonna put that on the table until we found out.
Thank you, that's what it was.
Yes, you wait.
All right. The part that's on the screen now, Hannah, that's the part that your notes say we intended to.
Yes, it was about the how many times a city council member can be absent from regular meetings.
Fails to attend 3 regular council meetings in a row, or 5 regular meetings in a year, or is convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude.
And then that last sentence was what we tabled.
Was what
and
we
it was
said
the
we were going to
next
come back
section.
on. That's right. Okay, so I've just simply added that as a new note. I will bring that back at the next meeting. I know that, Ashley, I had some notes in the draft I sent you that had notes about moral turpitude, and I don't see those here now. Okay, so I did write a note. I've got it in another document. I can pull it back up. Here's what moral turpitude is. And the reason that I was not willing to give you a list last time is because it's not written in law anywhere. It's not in a state code anywhere that says a crime of moral turpitude is this. It's a creature of common law. Judges have defined it throughout history by adding various different crimes that are crimes of moral turpitude. Generally, they say the definition of moral turpitude is a crime that shocks the conscience and that would lead a person to conclude that the person who committed the crime is untrustworthy. And so I went out and did some research and found a place that had listed all of the cases that had found a particular type of crime to be a crime of moral turpitude. And that's what's in the note that I meant to bring back to you guys. And it includes such crimes as theft, battery of a woman by a man, not by another woman, and not battery of a man, but battery of a woman by a man, sexual assault of a child, bribery, fraud, filing a false report with a police officer. It's a series of crimes like that. It is not a neat, tidy bundle of what is a crime of moral turpitude. Okay? I don't know if that helps with this decision or not. I will, however, say that it is a commonly used phrase in situations like this to say that if a person is convicted of a crime of moral turpitude, then they forfeit their office. And what would happen in that case is the judge hearing that criminal trial would either convict the person of a crime that has previously been moral turpitude by another judge, or the judge would say, I know nobody's called this moral turpitude before, but it sure shocks my conscience, and I'm therefore calling this a crime of moral turpitude in this case. And so there's flexibility for it there for the judge who is convicting that criminal of that conduct. Because remember, here we're only talking about convicted of a crime of moral turpitude. We're not talking about just a mere accusation.
And this isn't already covered by any sort of state law about who is eligible to be on a city council, correct? Like Texas, the state of Texas hasn't stepped in and said you cannot be on a city council if you have been convicted of being in possession of child pornography or something like that.
Right.
Okay, so we do have to lay that out word for word.
That's
Okay.
something that gets laid out by you guys.
So do you think that the wording
Is appropriate.
is appropriate, or is there a way to tweak that, in your opinion?
The language, and again, it's here in the margin note about forfeiting office if they fail to possess the qualifications, violate any express provision of the charter, fails to attend 3 regular council meetings. All of that is perfectly clear. I don't have a problem with any of that, and I'll be able to drop that directly in. I suppose my question then is that something that the committee wants to vote to include in the charter?
I think so.
All right.
Okay.
You want to call a vote on adding moral turpitude? The remainder of what's there was voted on last time.
Okay.
The only thing we're voting on is, do we want to add the phrase, is convicted of a crime of moral turpitude, to the prohibitions that will result in someone forfeiting their office?
May I make a motion to add moral turpitude to Section 6, vacancies, to fill in the rest that's already been approved? All those in favor?
I second.
Oh, all those in favor?
No.
Okay, that passes by a majority. All right, I'll get that put in and we'll circle back to that one next time. All right. The next comment had to do with the powers of council. And here again, this is a section where there was a long list because of historical reasons, and we voted to simply reduce that down to the sentence, the council shall have the full power and authority subject to the Constitution and laws of the state of Texas and limitations provided in this charter to exercise all powers conferred upon the City of Aransas Pass. So that's just a broad general statement, and that was what we voted on last time. Marking that resolved unless there's an objection. Moving forward. Hector's comment we took no action on, so I'm going to resolve that thread. We added in section 10, if you're following on paper, I'm on page 6 now. Section 10, meetings of the council. There was the request that all council meetings that are subject to the Open Meetings Act would be put on YouTube or some other publicly accessible website. And so that's what that sentence now says. It also addresses my comment, which is the next comment we have here, just to change that cross-reference to say the Texas Open Meetings Act, which is what it's called today. It's no longer buried under Texas civil statutes. So the new sentence added reads, all meetings of City Council that are subject to the Open Meetings Act shall be video recorded with such video records made available to the public through the city's website or another publicly accessible website. Okay, note the "or" there, that's important. It does not have to be on the city's website.
It could be on like YouTube.
Yeah, it could be uploaded to YouTube, and that would satisfy this charter provision. Okay, I'm hearing no objection, so I'm assuming that that is worded the way we wanted it to. I'm going to resolve those two comments. The next was a comment of mine just to bring things in alignment with Robert's rules, and that passed to add the phrase members present and voting so that it does not require a majority of the entirety of council in order to approve. The next comment box, we took no action on the emergency ordinances portion of that, but here again we had a comment about requiring something broadly that requires everything to be on the website, and I'm going to circle back to that at a later comment. Maybe it's a later comment. It's actually in this same paragraph, so let me jump down to that.
I want to say that was the discussion of it always being in the newspaper. If it's
That's
required to
correct.
be in the newspaper, it needs to be on the website.
I can barely squeeze it onto my screen here, but it is section 12. I added a sentence at the very end that says, all ordinances requiring publication hereunder and all other documents required by law to be published in the official newspaper of the city shall also be published on the city's website or on another publicly accessible website. All right? Now,
I have a question real quick. What, like a city ordinance, would it be on any other website than the city website for any?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
yes. The city pays for a service called MuniCode,
Oh, okay, fair enough, okay.
and it's not actually on the city's website, but there's a link to it on the city's website.
But like we can go view that. We don't have to
Absolutely,
pay-
currently
cool.
publicly available.
Dope.
Let me tell you, there is a problem with the way this is written, and Brenda brought this up to me last week, or maybe earlier this week. I don't remember when it was, Brenda, and it's a really good point. And it has to do with the International Building Code, the International Plumbing Code, the International Electrical Code, all of those construction codes that the city adopts. We don't put those on our website. We typically, what most cities do is they make them available in the city secretary's office. And the reason you do that is because those are proprietary work product of the International Code Council. The International Code Council has them on their website where you can buy copies for a fee because it's their work product. And so almost every city that I know of, writes in their charter, if they're saying that things have to be on the website, they include that phrase that says, or a copy shall be available in the city secretary's office. I think that that's a good change because we cannot guarantee that ICC is going to make these things available to the public. It's their proprietary work product. They can sell it if they want to.
Like I could come in and view this copy for free.
You can come to the city secretary's office and they plop it on the desk in front of you.
I'm
All right?
able to that.
Okay. So is the entire committee comfortable with the idea of me adding that phrase in? We didn't talk about it last time.
And it's just regarding building code or codes in general.
That's the goal, is
Proprietary
for,
information.
I feel like
Right.
that leaves a little bit of a loophole,
It does, because.
it does leave a loophole.
and I don't know if I like that.
Texas municipalities with populations under 15,000 have no fire code and have to comply with state fire code. So basically, they can do the local fire code.
So can we add that we will adopt state fire code instead of allowing that loophole? Or-
You would not do that at the
Okay.
charter level.
Tracking.
Okay, you wouldn't do it at the charter level. It's contained in your code of ordinances. So city council goes out and they pass an ordinance, which is law, saying, instead of writing our own chapter called the fire code here, we're simply cross-referencing over to that other document. And we adopt that other document in its entirety. Some cities then say, that's paragraph 1, paragraph 2, except,
Right.
right, and then they list a whole bunch of exceptions to it. You
But
can
is there any
certainly,
more work for you? Why wouldn't you just model the fire code that literally everybody else models? It doesn't make
that
sense.
is what most cities do.
Okay.
The problem
But-
is, and it's happened here, is that those books are modeled after large cities.
Mm-hmm.
So then there's ordinances and regulations in them that don't necessarily apply to like our town. And then you get somebody who wants to go enforce a code that really shouldn't necessarily be enforced in a town this size, in a building that's of 1 story, 2 story, as opposed to a high rise.
Right.
And then you create a big old storm.
Absolutely.
It also-
Next thing you know, it's worldwide on
And
on
remember,
YouTube.
remember that there is always a variance process. If a builder wants to get a variance from what the codes require, the builder can request that variance process and we can work through that, right? And what happens in cities of larger size than here, honestly, is that you start getting the same variance over and over and over again. In Victoria, there was a repeated variance for, in commercial buildings, you have to have, correct me on this, Brenda, in the electrical code, you have to have shielded wires so that your electrical wire has to be within a metal shield within the wall. And we were just granting variances to stuff like that regularly. And so they just rewrote and said, we're following the electrical code, except we don't require this. So you'll know if it's a problem for your community because you're going to start granting these variances all the time. And then you go in at that time and you carve out an exception. You don't have to do it on the front end. Now, we're getting way into the weeds. This is way more specific than you would ever put in a charter. But that's the way it's typically handled.
Okay.
So the question at this point is, are y'all comfortable with, or a copy is available in the city secretary's office? The only time that that would come up is for something that we're not putting into Muni Code, right? Because Muni Code contains all of the ordinances that we're passing. Everything that goes into your city code is already going to be codified into Muni Code.
Like as soon as if the city decides to change something, they're required to update that copy. Like so if I go read this copy, I can't be reading outdated information so that I would get in trouble.
I
or
wish I
something?
could tell you that's true, but there's obviously an administrative delay in there, and I have seen in other cities that administrative delay take a while.
Like years or months or days?
No, months.
Months. Okay.
Because it costs money to do an update, and so what city secretaries often do to save money is they they wait until they've got enough to bother sending it to MuniCode.
I understand.
And so there can be a delay in there. And what some cities will do is they will make the ordinance available on the website. Like they'll just create a page, recently passed ordinances not yet codified. And they'll just put that on the city's website. And then once it gets put into the city code, they take it off of there and everything's included in. So I've seen it handled that way.
Okay.
So if we did it that way, federal code is just the way we do things. That would be it. Our fire code would be whatever a federal code is.
It would be whatever code is adopted, all right? And we refer to those as the ICC, the International, Fire Code, the International Building Code.
But let me just explain this real quick, because that could really kill like our area. And our big thing is that all of our VRBOs and all that stuff, well, I have a building on commercial, I'm on commercial street, so technically, if I want to do that, I have to get the whole $50,000-$60,000 sprinkler system and do all that before I could even get into that.
Okay, so
if we adopt something, or we have a narrow way where we can't get out of that, then we're gonna miss a lot of opportunities.
We're not tonight arguing whether or not the city should adopt the ICC.
Okay, all right, that's as long as we're not completely adopting the ICC.
All that we're saying
What I'm
is
getting at,
that
'cause I don't
that
want-
is one.
That's where we would have a book, as
Okay.
opposed to all
Correct.
those codes on. Is there a way to clarify that on the online then, like instead of it saying, or a physical book, where it's only pertaining to these international codes kind of thing?
How about we write it so that we have to make a note in MuniCode. So if you go on MuniCode and you're going to scroll down and you're going to get to that section of MuniCode that says we hereby adopt the fire code, the
And it'll say
International Fire
whichever
Code,
one,
and
what
it will
year.
say this International Fire Code shall be made available in the city secretary's office.
Yeah. And if, as long as it, or what did, I know you had something to say.
No.
No?
Because when I go to ask something and then somebody makes a comment and I'm like, now I get it. And my biggest thing was kind of what Doug had brought up about that kind of, well, what if something changes? And then it's almost like, not entrapment, that's too strong of a word, but it's kind of like that gray area of, well, I'm looking at the code to make sure everything's to code. And I looked at the book and I go and do something, but
Yeah.
now I'm in the red because I've done something wrong. But every available mode or
So
way that
true. I think as long as we
Let me
put
just
the-
interrupt real quick. So as far as that, usually if you're gonna do something on your property, you have to go and get a permit.
Yeah.
And that requires inspections. So at that time when he submits his plan, then whoever reviews, which is usually the planning department and the building department, your plan, they're gonna be, hey, you're missing this and this and this.
Okay.
This law just changed, now it's this. So if he comes to the city to get a permit, he's not gonna get into the red because we'll stop him ahead of time.
That's a good point. It's not a gotcha system.
Okay. That kind of gray area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where we
Yeah, I think as long as we
Yeah.
have on there, like, and it says like, in the MuniCode, if you get to a certain one, it says like, we follow IFC
All right.
2020, but it's gotta say what year because each book's different.
I will drop a
that
note
makes a big deal.
then. I'll drop a note to make a further revision to this. Sorry, I gotta wake up my computer again. To add an exception for codes that cannot be printed online
Perfect.
will be noted and available in the city secretary's office.
Can a link be put in there to the codes that cannot be printed
He's saying it's proprietary
online, but a
information.
link? Yeah, but it's proprietary, but could there be a link to that site?
I can,
But then you gotta pay to join it, so I mean,
If
it's
you
Well,
just
but you
Google
have
it.
that choice. If you've got a link, if you're asking about,
he said there was a
whatever.
link to that website, on the website already.
but there would be a link in the mini code, wherever we're talking about, that goes to those sites. And when you get to the site, it's gonna say, if you proceed, we're gonna charge you, you have to log in, yada, yada. But I think there's links, there should be links.
there is not currently a link on the city's MuniCode website to the International Code site where those codes can be found. Nor is there on any other cities, right?
Okay.
If you Google it though, there are bigger cities that pay to have it, and you can usually find it without having to come in, but you gotta do a little digging.
But I thought
But
I
you're not-
had,
if you just went to the link, it's not gonna show you anything.
right, but I thought I had gone to the link, to the Muni Code myself personally and found links. I guess not. I dreamed it.
I don't think you
Okay.
did.
So at this time, because you're rewording it, do we need to make a motion now on that wording or wait?
Yeah, yes, I would prefer for you to make a motion on that now.
Okay, so I make a motion to change the wording that a recorded index in a system, whether it's on online platform or a physical book located in City Hall.
A second.
All those in favor?
I,
Okay. That one stays for next time, may continue. We have now gotten into section 13, administrative departments. Oh, no, I'm sorry, one more section here. This one didn't get moved to another. All right, once we get down to section 14, city secretary, we had a motion to just move it all into Article 6. But administrative departments here, I don't remember if 16, 13 was supposed to go.
I
It does say
don't have a note
move
on
to 6, rename. Got it. So all of that is going to go, so we can skip that. All right, that means that where we are right now, we have finished reviewing everything that we did last meeting, with the exception, Madam Chair, of term limits.
Okay. So we're ready for that?
I think we need to go back to the discussion of term limits.
Okay. Going back to term limits, we did do some emailing back and forth. The two top ones were a 3-term consecutively, 6 years, each with mayor and council, with a 1-term being 2 years off before being able to run again. Or we had the 4 terms consecutively, which would be 8 years combined, total combined, for all council, including mayor, with a 1-term off before being able to run. So let's just, it favored more, it looked like a little bit with the three terms and 3 terms, and then being somewhat separate, like 3 terms for council, 3 terms for mayor. My biggest concern on that one only is the 12 years that someone could be in there. I think 12 years is a long time. But if that's what everyone's
Do
more
they have to be
leaning
voted
towards,
in?
huh?
They do have to be voted in.
Yeah, they do have to be
Like,
voted in. Would y'all feel comfortable at all, like even doing something like on something with, if we went that route, where it just says, but consecutively max 10 years?
How would that work though, if we did 3
You can do,
terms, council and mayor?
because they could still do 3 terms as, like a mayor, and they'd be 6 years, and then they can do two years as a council, or vice versa. But the max, once they get 10 years, you're out no matter what.
I'm not applicable to that one personally.
Just throwing it in there, trying to, anyone else have anything, or do we want to just, is everyone more in favor of voting on the 3 terms and 3 terms?
That's my preference personally.
Yes, sir. And that, do we include, like, all of our boards, our present boards, or zoning, everything?
I think we have to do that separate.
We have to do that separate?
This is
Well,
just
we
for
can ask-
council
I
and
think
mayor,
that's
from my
just
understanding.
as important. If we're gonna lay terms on the council, I think it is just as important to have terms on boards and how many boards people.
I'm not gonna say which council member it was, but they told me if you can't get it in 5 years, why worry about 6? 6 years should be the limit.
I understand.
That's where I was
and
just.
boards are not an elective position.
There's still, I still feel like they should have some limits.
I do have a real quick question. When we vote on terms, it would then be a separate kind of discussion and vote on how it starts with our, like whether grandfathered in our current sitting. That would be
That's
a
correct.
separate vote, right?
Separate
So,
question.
Okay, just want to make sure.
And then, as Mr. Rios was stating too, would this be separate, or would this go with this also?
Boards and commissions, I would prefer not to have that discussion right now.
Okay, so we'll wait till.
Because right now, we're just talking about city council.
Okay.
There will be another section where we can bring up boards and commissions later. I don't remember whether that's carved out in the charter. We certainly could. the way it's handled in most cities where you have term limits for boards and commissions is that it's done as an ordinance, not as a charter provision, but we can do it as a charter provision if that's what y'all want. Right now, I would like to just deal with council members. I think that's going to be a hard enough discussion.
Okay. So, right now, if someone wants to make a motion, what I have in my notes is there was one person more in favor of doing the 3 terms consecutively, 6 years for each position, as opposed to the 4 terms consecutively, 8 years. There was one person less for that. So if someone wants to make a motion either way.
Just to be clear, what I'm in favor of is 6 years on city council, and if they are able to be elected to mayor, they have another 6 years to maintain that position. And then if they want to run again, they have to take a year off before they ever come back into government.
Or one term.
One term, as I was. Yeah. That's what I
Is that
Well,
one
that could
term
mean
off?
somebody running for 12 years straight, then taking a break.
if they get elected that
Yeah,
way.
if they get elected, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, or that was what we came up with when we were emailing back and forth, was between that one or the 8 years consecutively, and that was it. Where it
I
was-
like the 8 years
I like the
consecutively, but I'm not completely opposed to the other one.
That's where I'm at too.
So, Doug, for clarification, you said one term off after. Did you mean, so what, the way I'm looking at it right now is three terms plus 3 terms. Can I go straight from council member to mayor, or do I have to take the year off?
And
So
not from
it's-
what I was understanding.
So
So-
your proposal is the 1 year off doesn't apply until after 12
After 12
years.
years
Cap
consecutive.
of 12 years.
Got it. Okay.
At most, you can serve 12 years consecutively if you're able to accomplish that.
All right.
Are you motioning that, Doug?
No, I just wanted to clarify what
That's what-
I wanted to
yeah,
make
it
sure
might
that
not have
I
been real clear,
understood
yeah.
what the final.
And just for my own understanding, we say sit off 1 term, we can't mean wait till the next election, because that would only mean
Yeah,
Well,
one.
term
one
is 2
term.
years.
So we're
Yeah,
saying
term is a
sit
term.
out 2 full years.
A term.
One
okay.
term.
And I think I would write it that way. Let's say 2 years off, rather than saying 1 term off, because that does get confusing when you
Because
talk
they
about
can say,
the
well, that was
overlap.
one term for that.
All right.
Gotcha.
I agree.
Okay.
I will make the motion regarding what we're saying right now, the 6 years for council, 6 years for mayor, and 1 term off, or 2 years off before running again.
A second.
Now that we have a motion and a second on the floor for that, and we're kind of locked into that discussion, I have a clarification question. You said 3 terms, you said 6 years.
Well-
There's a big difference.
I'm sorry.
Because if we talk about terms, 3 terms, I'm going to then ask the follow-up question, does a partial term count? You get appointed midway through and you only serve 1 year instead of 2 years, right?
So that
But the
would
way
only
you
happen-
wrote it, the way he made his motion, we don't have to worry about that. 6 years is 6 years, whether that's a partial term or not. Okay? And I just want to point out that there's a difference between what was discussed and the motion that was made. So the motion on the floor right now is 6 years, then move to another office, either from mayor to council member or vice versa, council member to mayor. And after that, potential 12 years, then 2 years off before running again. That's the motion on the floor
So
right
in
now.
that hypothetical scenario, somebody comes in midterm, so has that first year, then completes 2 more full terms, 4 years, so now they've served 5 years. Are they ineligible to run?
They're ineligible to run.
Because they
That's just like the
couldn't- because
president.
they
He
couldn't
came in
fill.
February.
Well, so then there needs to be a
And then he ran
clause.
in May.
So-
That
so
would
that-
be 2 terms.
So that would only occur if there's a
I'm gonna
vacancy,
second
right?
his
Or
motion.
disability.
His
or-
motion has already been seconded.
With it going with the 12 years, I'm gonna favor that if we're going on that route personally.
But so that would only happen with a disability or like some sort of extenuating circumstance.
That's right.
Well, it'd be like Joe.
Well, then I would motion, I would say, personally, that an extenuating circumstance, that year is not counted. Because like you said, on the end of their term, they're either out, or at the beginning of their term, they're out.
Then it would have to be phrased as 3 full terms.
3
Would be the
full
alternate.
terms. Right.
That's-
So, we're deep into Robert's Rules of Order now. Here's what I want to do. Doug, I want you to make a motion to amend to change his 6 years to 3 full terms.
Okay. I make a motion to amend the motion from 6 full years to 3 full, so 6 years consecutively to 3 full terms.
If his motion gets a second and passes, then Myron's motion will be rephrased, and then we will have the opportunity to vote on whether or not we want those term limits. Right now, if we get a second, we have a second.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
And one abstention. Okay, so the motion on the floor now for the committee's decision is 3 full terms as a council member or mayor, and then 3 full terms in the opposite. You have to switch, right? And then 2 years off. Right?
That's what I.
That's the term limit that is currently being debated. Further discussion.
That is seconded already, so we just.
That has already been seconded. That is on the floor. We're not doing anything else until we get a vote on that.
Do you have to say it, or can I say it?
All those in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All those opposed?
1, 2. Okay, so that is a 5-2-1. That's 5-2-1. Okay, so that passes. I'm going to make sure that my notes reflect that correctly before we go any further. All right, so what you see in my notes in the margin, 3 + 3 terms, 2 years off after 6 terms. That's what I'm going to incorporate and bring back to you guys next time. All right, guys. I think we are at this point done with Articles 1 through 3. That only took an hour. Madam Chair, do you want to call a break before we switch gears?
Anyone needing a break? Y'all want a break or y'all want to continue?
I'm okay with I'm okay with
I'm okay
pushing
for now.
forward.
Let's proceed.
All right. Article 4, elections. All right, the first comment on elections has to do with adding a section on residency. Elise, you want to talk about this one?
I think we actually touched this last time and you said it's really irrelevant.
Okay, so you don't want to proceed with that, I'll just mark that no action. The next comment also, Elise, is yours about changing the election to November.
Yes, I had that presented to me many times about instead of our elections being in May, if we could move them to November, they felt like there'd be a higher turnout and it also wouldn't cost the city as much because we already have to have an election. I don't know if that should make a difference or not on that,
Okay.
but
Why would it cost us less?
because the only reason we're having an election typically in May is for local, correct?
Yeah, so to answer that question,
The votes would be in November instead.
yeah, the cost of the election is always split among however many entities are having an election. So in May, that's typically just the city and the school district. All right, in November, you could be combined every other year with county, state, and national elections. Right, so you could potentially save you money. Let me tell you, this is a statewide debate, a debate that has gone on for probably a couple of decades, all right? And proponents of moving to November state the argument exactly the way she just did. It's a chance for us to save more money and increase voter turnout. Opponents of it would tell you that May elections are nonpartisan elections. November elections are partisan and typically have primaries. And so if you move to a November election, the voters will expect to decide based on whether you're a Democrat or Republican. City elections have historically been nonpartisan. That's why they're in May with school districts. Texas politics are currently moving in a direction where the state legislature is encouraging cities to become partisan. Just in the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen bills pass the state legislature that have said things like, it's not illegal to declare yourself a member of a party in an independent election. It's not illegal to put that on the ballot to say you're a Republican. That's really what it's about, right? The Republican Party has such a stranglehold on statewide politics that the Republican Party of Texas sees this as a way to tighten their hold on city elections as well by encouraging cities to move to November and become partisan elections. That's what the underlying debate is about. The proposal here to move to November does not say and be partisan, but many people will see it as one step along the path.
On the note, just for my own clarification on the saving the money, but we're not talking about moving school elections, so the school elections are gonna stay in May.
Right.
So it,
Spend the money.
so,
We're already spending money.
It's irrelevant, yeah.
There's just not, like this last election, all it was, there was no school election, or there was nothing on it.
I thought there was a school board.
I don't know, I mean, I don't think, no, I think this last one, it was.
If nobody happens to run for the school board seat,
Yeah.
the school board
Or I
will
could be wrong
cancel
on
their
that.
election and then you just have a city election by yourself.
I might be wrong on that. I'm like, I just remember being like, that was the quickest election, this last one. It's like, you literally walked in and out and it was like, I didn't even have to like think.
Yeah, yeah.
So I could be wrong, but there might have been something on the school board, I'm not sure.
So this seems like an innocuous little question,
Yeah.
but this is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And if y'all want to be a wolf or embrace the wolf, go right ahead. I don't have a problem. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just warning you there's a lot more going on under the surface here.
Anyone else have opinions on this? I see the
definitely
pros
don't
and
want
cons to
Republican
both.
and Democrat in my local elections. I can
Do
tell
what?
you that. I said, I don't want Republican and Democrat in my local elections. I can
I'm
tell you
the
that
same,
much.
I'm the same.
I don't want to.
I don't think it would be like
It's
that,
bad
though, would it?
enough.
I mean, it would just be,
Well,
this
but
would
But that's
just
what
hit the bottom.
he's saying.
Not
that
correct.
the
That
voters-
just does not say that you would become a partisan election.
Right. No, what he's saying is
very
the-
easily
from
to
the
add
voters'
that.
side is when they come up that they're expecting that because they're in the mode of I'm going to vote Republican or I'm going to vote Democrat. And I would not
Yeah.
want to start that.
Yeah.
They would have to have a city election on each one of them anyhow.
I voted.
So is everyone kind of feeling more like, let's just leave this alone for now?
Election
That's
on
my
the
thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Democrat and Republican.
All right, I think everyone's ready just to leave it alone.
Okay, so we'll leave that one alone.
We'll leave that
Mark
to the next
note.
charter review. Good luck, guys.
Yeah, yeah, let them have it.
Don't call me in 2
Especially if you're
years.
speaking
Less
to
politics
members of
the
the
better.
public who aren't on here, why not bring it up? It was
Yeah.
brought up, we discussed it, it was put to the
I
side, but that way whoever brought it up, they had an opportunity
Yeah.
to put.
And there was
themselves there.
actually, there's been a lot of talk about that, and I understand completely why.
Absolutely.
It's mostly on their part, really even more than the money is the voter
It also
turnout, just
muddies
saying we
the
have such
information.
low.
I would assume.
And
Then you have a
people
lot
are
more
gonna vote for
information to pay
president, so
attention to and be educated on.
So I get it.
Yeah. Hector, your next question has to do with appointing election judges. And this is something that is controlled by state law. It says that the entity calling the election will appoint election judges. And as a practical matter, what typically happens is there's a county elections administrator that runs all of the elections. And so the county elections administrator recommends to the city and the school district that Bobby Joe be an election judge in that precinct. That way, it's the same person at that precinct for both the city and the school district. And it's a process that works pretty well the way that it is. If you'd like to change it, we can, but it will disrupt kind of more than just our own elections.
What do y'all think? It's just, as you can see, I just thought it was a little, if you're running and then you have the power to appoint your election judge and you're running, I don't know, it doesn't seem
Is
right,
it
but
one-
it's up to you. Go
Is it
ahead.
one person or the whole council that appoints it?
Right now, it's the whole council, right? And so he's trying to limit it to
The whole
say
sitting
that
council?
the city council, yeah.
But I
I
can see
like
that would be a
saying
conflict, because there
non-candidate.
is 3 people on one term, right?
But there's not, I think leaving it like it is and leaving it as nonpartisan as possible is a good idea.
So it's a by vote, it's not just one person says this person does it, they have to say this person should do it, and then they pass it by vote?
Motion second and all of council votes.
I think the issue.
It's usually,
I say leave that alone. If it's a vote already, you can't really, I don't know. It's tough.
like I say, it's usually something that's recommended by the elections administrator. There's usually no discussion on the part of the city councils when they're making this vote, because they know that the list of election judges that they're being presented is also being presented to the school district. And if we start messing with our list, that means that you're going to have two sets of election judges now. So it's a joint election kind of efficiency thing. Most cities don't mess with it.
Well, all of our city council members aren't friends, so they can't all be on the same page, so it's all good.
All right, Hector, do you want to make a motion, or do you want to just leave this as no action?
I don't know, what do y'all think? Just leave it as no action? Y'all pretty happy with things? I mean, I can be swayed a little bit either way. I totally, I'm going with, now that you're telling me the whole process, and I'm, okay, I'm a little bit better, with it than I was when I first read this. So I'm at ease with it. I'll just go ahead, I'll just drop it.
I think it's more trouble than it's worth at the moment.
Okay? Boom. All right, filing as a candidate, Elise. Do you want to explain this one?
Yes, right now, the application that they are giving candidates is reflective, I'm assuming it's just a standard state application, but it does not reflect our charter, and there's things that contradict it. So if you read in the application, like specifically nepotism, it reflects state law and not charter, and that caused a big issue in the last few years. And unfortunately, the prior city attorney just kept putting out state law and pretended we didn't have a charter, and kind of the whole city government just pretended
like your charter doesn't matter.
charter doesn't matter.
I can tell you why they pretended that.
Because they knew they were wrong.
No, because your charter doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Right? Remember, let's go back to our foundational principles. If state law says you do it this way, you have to follow state law. The charter is below that.
Right.
And so if your charter says, like it does here, that we're going to check to see if you've got all your city bills paid before we can let you be a candidate, sorry, state law doesn't allow that. And so we have to ignore what's in our charter because state law has already superseded it.
So on the nepotism, it would not have mattered? Like what, I mean, I thought that as long as it wasn't unconstitutional, would that have been unconstitutional?
So
I'm just a little confused on like what the
there's
point of even
a
having
reason
charter
you're
then.
confused. There's another reason you're confused, and I'm trying not to jump ahead to the other reason yet. But remember, state constitution, state law, then charter,
Got that.
then city law.
I just thought that charter was in addition to state, as long as it didn't,
If, in this case, elections are largely controlled by state law. State law says you can be a candidate if.
okay.
It says that cities can add one change to candidate qualifications. You can change the minimum age from 18 to 21. All right. Other than that, qualifications to run for office are established by state law. And anything that's in your charter to the contrary, we just ignore because it's illegal.
Okay, so then that's something when we get there, we're going to take out.
Right.
And that's the next
and you see, that's my next comment, right?
Okay.
So the next comment, as I jump down below, says delete this phrase here because there is no such qualification requirement that they pay bills. It's interesting, even in your own charter, it doesn't say that you have to pay your own bills in order to be a qualified candidate for election. If we were to jump back up to that section, it says you have to live in your district and you have to be a qualified voter. It doesn't say, and pay all your bills on time. So here we have a section that says the city secretary shall check to see if you have complied with some stuff that's not required, right? So this needs to come out because it's A, contrary to state law, and B, it's contrary to your own charter. So once we take that out, that is also going to resolve, at least I think, your concern about.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the big thing too is and I know we can't really put this in charter, it's like how it's addressed, like when someone comes up, you know, if that's the way they're gonna address it, they just keep going, here's the state law, here's the state law. It's like, they need to say, well, hey, our charter's not up to date.
Yes.
Charter's wrong. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that would have cleared up so much instead of it caused so much division of they don't care.
Bingo.
As opposed to just freaking being transparent and saying, dude, our charter kind of sucks. It's
So why don't we take up,
illegal.
why don't we take up my comment before Elise's, delete this highlighted language here about the duty of the secretary to check all of the stuff, because it is inconsistent with state law. That'll be a Prop A matter. If we can get a motion in a second and a vote to delete that phrase as inconsistent. Hector,
Yes,
question?
I'd like to make a motion that we delete that phrase in section 2, following another candidate that is highlighted by you.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so I'm going to post that, and then I believe, Elise, that takes care of your comment here, so I can mark that one as no action. And essentially what we did there is we just made that section 2, filing as a candidate, consistent with state law. Moving on into section 3, language about the ballot. This is a comment from me as well, because all of this language that I have highlighted here about drawing lots to be put on the ballot, all of that is in state law already. You don't need to put it in your charter, and to whatever extent your charter is different than state law, we ignore anyway. So we might as well just delete it out of the charter to avoid those kinds of confusion.
Can we make that as one motion for the rest of the charter for anything, or like how we did, I think it's been.
Like, I make a motion for section 3, 4, and 5 of Article 4 for the deletion of phrases that just duplicate state law.
Yes.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good job.
Any motion to expedite this, I promise it's not.
Sorry, just give me 1 second while I get caught up to us with regards to my notes. All right, now, Elise, I want to clarify, you said, can we just do that charter-wide and just say from now on, anything that is duplicative as a matter of state law, we're going to go ahead without it coming back to the committee? I'd rather not do that, because I want y'all to at least know what
Why?
those items are. So
But we
that
can do it
when-
like this when it's on the same page. Or,
Right, when the
Okay.
citizens come to you and say, hey, why was that section removed? I want y'all to have had this discussion.
Okay, perfect.
All right, all right. So, but now we're down to Article 5, initiative, referendum, and recall. 25% votes of the votes cast in the last regular election.
You want to lower it?
Actually, every other charter I read, they didn't have any percentage at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was none. Now on,
Didn't they have to have some sort of stuff
now
on how
on,
many?
on this, wait, is this on the,
It's initiative.
yeah, this is an initiative. They didn't have any at all, which
Yeah.
I thought was odd too.
Yeah, there's got to be some minimum standard, right? Because, all right, so this is initiative. This is the citizens
Right.
getting to put a law
just
on
said,
the books, right?
Yes.
That they're going to file a petition. How do we know if they have enough signatures?
Right, and it just, oh, I wish I would have printed them up.
There was one, and it's later on that I highlighted, because the 25% didn't kind of frazzle me. It's when, I think it's in recall. The
Okay, that could be
25% or 500, whichever is higher, that I went,
No,
oh, our
that's-
voter turnout is usually.
Yeah, no, that one,
And I
on
just had a
all of them,
question
they had
on that.
numbers. On this one, I don't recall, I'd have to pull them up, but I just, if it did, I know 25% was high then, if we, I don't know if we even need to, just why I wanted to talk about it, because,
How many voters normally vote in a city election?
900 maybe?
oh, that's on a good, like, late,
Yeah,
late,
it's normal,
sometimes it used to be
like
300, you know, like, it just depends.
So 25% is 100?
So the last city
I mean,
election,
and I'm okay leaving it,
when
it was just more for talk, because I
Yeah.
wasn't seeing it in other.
the last city election was fairly contested. Does anybody know how many people voted in that election?
Little over 600.
A little over 600. So a quarter of that would be 150.
Yeah.
150 votes on a signature.
And I'm fine with that, like,
Yeah.
I'm fine leaving it, it was more for discussion, because I didn't see, I'm almost positive, the others didn't have it either. It was like, and I even questioned next, I was like, well, then how do you, like, one person can just go do this? You know what I mean? That kind of seemed weird.
Yeah.
So that was more for discussion. When we get to the recall, that one, I have a lot more
Yeah,
opinion.
we need more people to vote.
Okay, so.
This was just more for like, I wanted really to ask your question, you know, your opinion, because I was like, this is kind of weird.
Yeah, I'm perfectly
And I'm
comfortable
fine
with
with
25%.
it. Okay,
So you're saying no action on that one?
no action on that.
Okay.
That's fine.
Here's my next comment, and this is one of these throughout this entire section, or throughout the entire charter, really, but mostly in Article 5.
Thank you.
Whoever wrote your charter uses the word elector.
Weird.
And that's weird. I don't know why they did that or even how old it is, but there's a difference between a voter and an elector. When you go to vote for a presidential election this November, you are a voter. But you are voting technically
For an elector.
for an elector in the Electoral College
Yeah.
who will go cast the ballot for the state of Texas in the Electoral College. Your charter uses the word elector instead of voter, and I would like to change that.
We like to sound fancy.
Yeah, that's what our charter makes us fancy.
Fancy and wrong.
And it's very confusing when it comes to
Yeah.
that.
That's why everyone's so confused.
So,
Okay. Motion to
I make-
pass everywhere it says elector to voter.
second.
Second.
Through
All
the
those in
charter.
favor?
22
Aye.
times.
Aye.
Yeah, I searched the charter, there are 22 times it says elector. I'm like, okay, whatever.
The other section?
So, but-
I want to move that
You're
we
gonna have
take.
to look at the screen for the rest of it.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh, okay, that worked. I was gonna move to take a
Take a
5,
break.
10-minute break.
Yeah, let's take a break.
Okay.
Good. Where's that being broadcast?
How long?
It's FYI Aransas Pass.
FYI. We got like 2 pages of no comments on my. Oh, we really have no comments.
Yeah, I only had a few comments on 5 and 6. So,
Stand up anyhow.
Just rest.
Yeah.
So when you're texting.
Not for that, maybe a board though.
I don't have anything to write on for
At least we're plowing through this tonight. I was
Trying.
After how long it took last week, you heard me come in like, I'm gonna rush through this, I'm gonna rush through this, I'm gonna rush
That's
through
what I'm saying. Do we need to just pass everything that says? I'm not gonna be on Thomas's side for this.
this. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, we went back and forth on the whole term thing because it was just, there's so many ways it can go. But I told you guys something about when does this go into effect? Does it go into effect?
changes
Let's do that in a meeting when we get down.
Okay, because I forgot about that and I meant to bring it up and then I forgot
You're
again.
right. We've been talking about it for a long time, and then we just spaced it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because I think that's gonna be somewhat important.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on the short term.
Yeah, we're not going to the same one?
You can walk and be
That's number 2. Under property, that's number 2. You start with it, didn't that?
Now, the SDR, rental ordinance, we can't talk anything about that. Because it can't go against any of the ordinances that we do. So I can't talk about not having.
Really?
I was expecting a lot of damage.
Oh, yeah.
No, it can't go against because there's a lot of issues that are trying to come up.
All very good.
Well, people are always
All the
coming
way
around,
from
putting
Houston.
parties, and they've been more concerned about it. So now we have to create rules of.
Do they have fire?
Really?
Dispersion systems.
It's gonna put us,
Big trees broken right in the middle. And I didn't really lift it over.
Yeah, just broke. Tornadoes maybe?
Huh?
Tornadoes maybe?
That
Been
was.
in a lot of that.
I didn't do most of it.
Yeah.
Just in the second year.
And I'm sure they don't, because
I,
the problem
I
is also
expected
is
the
that the
same
city's
rock.
working for
Yeah, I
a
like
inspection.
Mhm.
For somebody
Oh,
to go
okay.
actually look into that.
I
Now,
can-
the bigger cities that have all these issues even more, like Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, they are incorporating the inspection.
Take care.
That's why I know. And then by the fire code coming out of that, I was through all this. That's what I'm doing. And Councilwoman Scruggs directly across the street, opened up, bringing in, you know, guests and everything, and I couldn't do it because I didn't have this suppression system.
And she didn't? And she opened it anyway?
Absolutely. Straight. Wrong with that. And which was like, how's this,
Yeah.
you know, how's this even
Yeah,
legal?
you put it across the board.
Yeah, it should be, yeah. So it was,
Well, we would have to start from scratch and then include everybody in it every year, have a yearly checkup to make sure that everybody's compliant. But you have to do that.
thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
greatly appreciate it.
Well, I'll try to do it for you next concept development, put that section behind that.
Okay.
Because they had to see it. And you see how that concrete could work, the structure of the water. That's what I'm thinking. Just in that last week. As long as it's very interesting and you're very organized.
I try to be, because it is a complicated process. If you're not organized.
I should have kept my mouth shut. It's raining.
It's 6:58 p.m. It's 6:59 p.m.
He was 7 when Hurricane Harvey hit. So at this point, he was like, are there going to be sharks? And I was like, no, Sharknado's not real. He was like, are you sure? And I'm like,
It's warmer outside than it is in here.
I'm positive.
That's going to change.
I've got to figure out how to make my computer not shut down.
Can you not go to display and tell it not to go to sleep?
We reconvene this meeting at 7 o'clock.
All right.
We were, speaking, we forgot to talk about on the term limits. When do we want this to go into effect?
Yeah, so
I personally think that we should count it as from the last election for any candidate being, so they're all in their first term right now.
Okay,
So,
Yeah, I mean, if we don't enact it sometime now,
Yeah, so
then
I'd like it to
it's
go ahead
all
and go-
irrelevant. We should, yeah,
you know, so
So-
everyone's in their first term right now.
As of the last election.
yeah.
As of
beginning of this.
each candidate's last election, not
As-
the last election, their last election. Since it's,
okay, that makes sense.
the way that's normally written is
Okay, so is there
that
anybody that
the
applies to
term
the-
limits begin counting when the charter gets amended.
Right.
right.
Right, and rather than, or it counts from the beginning of the person's term. Those are normally the two choices. You're trying to split the difference and come up with something in between.
Yeah,
Okay,
I just
but
wanted to
how-
start at
If you
the,
say when, because in my mind, I immediately jumped to, if we're saying it counts as when the charter gets amended, that would be this November,
spring.
this whatever,
Yeah.
would it be the spring?
because it doesn't go, it-
Right.
The
So
vote
take for
doesn't
example,
happen.
Mr. Haskins is the easiest here, right?
Okay.
Mr. Haskins was just elected May of '24.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the charter gets amended May of '25.
Okay.
Does his 6 years start in '25 or when he was originally elected in '24?
24. I want to do 24 and then the priors, which would have been 23. So that like in May, whoever gets elected, if they run again, they're on term 2. Who's in, which would be Jason and Randy, they're still on term 1.
Mm-hmm.
So that we're keeping it pretty much going the same rate.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
So-
I don't know how we would phrase that, but where it just starts as their
Begin counting in '24, right?
22.
Well, it would
I mean,
be,
23.
but it would be whenever we do the election, but because of how we've worded the phrasing,
Yeah. It would be from their last election.
Right, but by the time this gets passed in '25,
I just don't want it to be.
everyone's last election will have been in either '24 or '25, right?
No.
Yeah,
No, okay, well, yes.
'Cause
Yes,
it's been
but
passed
I
in
want-
25.
I don't want it to be that, if it's on that ballot, I don't want that to be those who are on the ballot this next one in
Oh.
May, that to be their first term. That should be their second term.
Okay, I don't have a problem
Does
with
that make
that.
sense?
how would that
y'all?
need to be
It's-
phrased?
No, not really.
Because what we're doing is we're going back to the last election for each candidate. And that's where they're starting. So like, we're talking almost like as it is today, everyone's on their first term.
Yeah.
So when it comes to May, you'll have the 2, which would be on the half of their first term. And then the others would be starting their second
So
term.
the two
Okay, I
city
got you.
council members coming up and the mayor, the election coming up, they will have completed one term at that election.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
So they'll be going
And
on.
then-
The ones that were just elected.
They'll
would
be
have
halfway
completed
through.
Halfway through their first term.
Mm-hmm.
And that's if we phrase it as.
And that still can give them a whole nother 12 years or 10 years to the other, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At that election day.
Yeah.
I feel.
I don't want you to worry about how to phrase it.
Okay.
I want you to tell me what you want, and then I'll go
That's what
figure out
I
how to
want.
write it and
That's
bring it
what
back.
personally I like.
I like that.
I'm agreeable
Yeah.
to that.
I like that a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, let's-
So can
let's
I,
get this-
y'all ready for me to
yeah,
make a
let's-
motion? Okay, I make a motion to start the term limits at the last election for each candidate.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Okay. I'll figure that out, how to write that. That takes us all the way down. Remember, we were talking about initiative, recall, and, initiative, what, and recall, what am I forgetting? Anyway, recall is where we should.
Initiative,
Referendum,
referendum.
that's the one I just forget. All right.
Where are we?
We skip all the way down to section 13 at the bottom of page 12.
Oh, we're gonna be up here now, right?
Yeah, we're on
Yeah.
page 12 now.
You're not gonna have a paper, it's gonna be all on the screen.
It's,
Okay, but we can go in here.
You're not
Is that
gonna.
right? I know I'm not, but
Okay.
we're still in Article 6 though, right? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. Okay. All right.
Recall is in Article 5, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we're still in Article 5.
Okay.
We haven't started 6 yet. All right, Article 5, this is, the next comment has to do with recall, and this is Elise's comment, and it is,
You need to read this because I can't see that.
Yeah, well, go for it, thank you.
Sorry.
yeah, okay.
Thank you.
And I'll zoom in on this as much as I can. I have to zoom back out in order to read the comments. But the point of this comment, and this is Elise's comment, is that the standards for recall are different than the standards for initiative and referendum. Because we just decided that 25% was okay there, and here it says 50% for recall or 500 votes, whichever is greater. So that would mean this charter is written to protect incumbent council members. She's proposing that gets changed. What do you want to change it to?
Okay, if we want to keep it on the same, we can do the 25%. I had 10% on here. That's more standard most places. I know that's nothing, but I also added that because I know that would be like next to nothing to do a recall. So I was good, put in to change recall to 10% total votes or 250, whichever is greater.
Yeah, I think 10% is too low. If you had
But that's why I
600
put
votes,
that
that's
or.
only 60 people.
my argument was, is I understand why you need 50%, because it wouldn't literally be 50% of the people that voted. You can go canvass and get whatever. My issue was that or 500 or greater, because already at our best election, 500 is more than 50%.
Yeah, agreed.
And so I'm almost okay with just saying equal to 50% of the, that way if we had an election and 300 people voted, I don't think it's ever been that low, you would just be 150 signatures for.
Yeah, I personally, I don't like the 50%
So we're saying the
or
threshold
500
is too
people.
high right now? Is that what we're saying?
More because of if it doesn't get changed in the future to reflect us, our growth.
Yeah.
Because we don't know, I mean, we saw how long the charter's been like this.
Yeah.
I want to protect the growth a little bit. I mean, we could do 25%, I think would be sufficient, like, and match what we
I
just
do
did.
think it's appropriate for recall to have a higher standard than initiative and referendum.
Because-
Because politics is so polarized right now, right?
Right.
I think it makes sense for us to, let's put an additional barrier on there so that we're not having
Well,
recalls.
and that's why I
all the
put the
time.
250, because I think that's a sufficient amount of people for our town and our elections, if you want to do a recall to get signatures.
What is-
When we have sometimes, well, and before we had all this polarizing in the last, 5 years, 6 years, we used to have elections that had 300 people, 300 and something.
So what is
people,
so we're saying the threshold right now is too high to accommodate our population? Is that what we're saying right now?
What
It's
I'm
just- it's
saying
just-
is, I don't like that 500.
Yeah.
I like I'm fine even with the 50% because that changes our elections are variable.
Yeah, but we have had
They're
elections that had 1,200, and let's just
It doesn't
say.
And I do believe, and here would be my argument for that. Because for this one, in contrast to initiative and referendum, this one is, undermining is too strong a word, but negating the vote of the people that already happened. And so I understand why the threshold is higher, because the people already had a voice, and so it has to be higher. I just hate that number's put on there, that 500, just because I think it ties it tethers it too much, whereas the 50% allows it to fluctuate.
What
depending
about
on
the 50% but changing the 500 to 250 and whichever's less? I just don't like, I think 500 is just high.
Well, you don't have to,
Well, so that's what
you
I'm.
don't have to get 500. All you need is 50%.
No, because
No,
it's
it says
whichever
it's
is greater. That phrase
Oh,
right there,
whichever is
whichever is
greater.
greater.
Greater, so you have to have 500.
Don't you feel
So
like?
I just
yeah.
think 250 vote, 250 signatures is a lot of effort for
Yeah.
someone to put out there. If they're wanting to recall, 250 is a lot.
Based on the last election, it would be give or take 300 signatures to do a recall right now.
Yeah,
See,
so
to me, that's, I mean, like, what do we have, like 7,500 people here, 8,000 people, something around that?
8,500.
So,
But of that percentage which are eligible voters, then that gets it down to probably a couple thousand.
So
you think only a couple thousand registered voters here, like 3,000 or 4,000?
I really would be, I have no idea through
The
the,
most I've ever seen on a, like when and you can't, don't quote me on this, but that I can recall looking back, was there was an election that had like 1,200 or 1,100 votes, but it was for, this was a while back, and it was, I don't remember what the election was for, and I think it was a November one.
So
But like he was just saying, the last one we had was how many people?
Y'all said it was
Oh,
about
800?
600 people.
600, so 600 people. I just think that if someone wants to do a recall, getting 250 signatures is a lot. It's, I mean, when you have, that's almost 50%, but it's just getting 500s. When you don't even have sometimes 500 people voting.
I feel like we're focused on the numbers that are coming, and unfortunately, it's abysmal right now. So to set, I feel like that's setting the bar too low, because like I'm just gonna be honest. Give me 5 years, and I'll have 250 friends, and I can come up with signatures. Like I haven't been here that long, but I feel like the numbers not that bad. I feel like that number's not that high.
Yeah, or just, I mean, you can do the only thing I don't like about the 50% is that for the future. And let's hope that we're gonna start growing.
but theoretically, if more people are participating, that's why I like it, because it fluctuates with the amount of people who are active.
Okay.
And theoretically, if we have more voters, it means we have more active participants. And again, some of those people that sign it may not have even voted, but they are residents of this area. I understand, I'm not against it being high, in the sense, because once again, this, as opposed to initiative and referendum, this is negating what has already been voted on by the voters, the electors.
And will be voted again within 2
Well, and
But I
I
like
think
that
it's
it's allowed
because
to
of
fluctuate.
No, I agree, and I think that, I agree with what you're saying 100%, but I think that typically we're not gonna have the recalls
Yeah.
in general like they've been this last time, where
That's
someone,
true.
you know what I mean? I think this is, we're in a special like circumstance, and so if there's gonna be a recall, it's gonna be for a reason of, like when they were gonna sell the harbor, and people got pissed and they're like, we're recalling y'all because you're not doing what the people. This isn't supposed to protect those that ran. The charter's supposed to protect the citizens. It is supposed to give the citizens a voice.
But
And I
I
don't wanna lose that, and I don't wanna say, well, I agree with the voting aspect. We're gonna go out there, we're gonna vote if they, but I'm not worried about the recalls that are just because one person got mad. You know what I mean? I'm worried about the recalls when this, as a whole, people are getting mad, and I just think that we need to lower it.
I think we already
if
have.
you look at any other charter anywhere, you'll never see this 50%. I mean, well, I'm not gonna say never. I never saw any that were 50% and 500. They were like, the most I saw was 25%, and a lot of them were at like 15, some were at 10. A lot of them didn't even have a max, and so I thought that's why I was like, 250's a lot. Like, that's an effort. It's an effort that someone's, and it's enough people saying, you've done something that's upset us. And we have to recall, it's a big pain in the butt. Like, we're re-electing every 2 years. So it's enough of a reason that the citizens think, I mean, 250 people, Denise, if they're that upset to sign it, it needs to be listened to. When we sometimes only have 300 something people vote, or 500 or 600, or even 800, I mean, that's still a quarter of the people.
I'd like to pose a question. Don't we already have proof of concept of this, though? If the community is mad enough or upset enough, they will come together and make this happen,
believe
which
this
they
was
did
made after
a full
that.
recall of the last people.
This was made after that.
This was made after that?
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, this
That
was
that
changed
explains
after
a lot then, okay. What were the core requirements before that?
I don't want a small group upsetting this.
Yeah,
I
no,
agree.
Causing all the
You're not gonna have a small group that's gonna get 250 signatures. Because, for one, with those signatures, which was actually evident in what happened before, most people don't want their name on it, because when it gets turned in, you get to see it. So it's gotta be something they know that there's gonna be at least 250 or more, you know what I mean, where are gonna be signing it, and that they feel like they have that backing that their name's on it. Because a lot of people don't want their name seen. And it will, when it's turned in, if it's actually turned in, then it can be seen who signed it.
closed.
So that's a long conversation.
I know.
Put it in here when we had this last round.
We all got a little time.
This was that, they were gonna need 500.
Yeah.
So does anybody have it? Was anybody around in 2008?
No.
You have any idea what happened in 2008? Like any idea of the number of signatures? Are we closer to the 250 that we're talking about now, or?
I was here, but I don't know the numbers.
Okay.
It's been a
In your
night or two.
I think it was, they had to get close to 300 signatures.
Give us that kind of insight
My
on that.
aunt and uncle
A flat
was
percentage.
running a lot
This
of that.
language about 4 or 500, whichever is greater, is the part that stands out to me.
What is usually the percentage?
I couldn't give you a number.
If you look at, I mean, if we wanted to continue, I'll look real quick, like, I looked up some in the hill country, different places, and even places, but they're like, they ranged between, 10's the lowest, obviously, there was some 15s, there's 20, 25, I would say, was probably a little more skewed, but I don't wanna say that 100%, but I probably looked at about 8 or so. And they all, but it was 25 and down. So I'm fine doing 25 even, and I don't, I mean, we can just leave it at 25, but I can see where 25% would be too low on a number. So I don't wanna do that either, like where we just get people, like, I'll get you 75.
I'm uncomfortable with 25.
You don't have to stop at that 25%. You can get as many as you want.
But that's saying the minimum required,
Yeah,
and
and
I
so
think that's too
that's
easy.
where, so I understand why that was put in there, but it needs to either say whichever's.
Yeah, I'm not happy with the 500 part,
Mm-hmm.
but the 50% I do like.
Well, and if y'all wanna do 50% and then change the 500, I just don't wanna, I
What
don't
about
think we
50% or
wanna leave
300?
the 50% as a whole, only because
Whichever's
for the
greater.
future, like, let's hope that
That's about.
we get an election, or even again, if it was at that
150.
1100 show up because it's a presidential election, well, we won't be voting then, but you never know what could happen.
So
I'm
what,
just saying.
what does
that-
25% come out to roughly right now of our last election? You said 300 something?
25% is 150 people.
That seems way too low.
Well, that's why I
That's
said
just
you
too
do
low.
the 250, which if they wanna
So you're
put
saying
something weird in
25%
there.
or 250?
Okay, there are 2 proposals being considered right now. Nobody's made a motion on either of them.
Yeah.
But Hannah has said she would like to strike the language that says or 500, whichever is greater, which would mean that 50% is the standard.
And that-
Elise has said she likes having that number in there, but she would like to see that 500 number reduced to 250 so that it's 50% or 250, whichever is
Yeah,
greater.
and I don't care what the percentage says. I mean, I do care. I'd rather it say 25% or 250 just because, but, I mean, if we need to leave the 50,
So
I'll,
50% comes out to roughly 300.
I mean,
Of
but
the last
the
election.
250s, I want it to at least 250 for a minimum of signatures, you know what I mean? Because I don't want everyone running rampant and you only have to have 75 signatures and that would be easy. But 250s,
Yep, getting up there.
50%
50% or 250?
with a minimum of
That's fine.
250.
Yeah.
That's what she's proposing.
That's what she's, yeah,
Uh-huh.
and I like that.
Yep.
the 50 and 250?
And the minimum of 250.
Yes, yeah.
It would be a
I'll go for
minimum,
that.
or it would be 250, whichever is
A
greater.
minimum of two, that's the wording, I don't like the greater
No,
part.
it would have to
A
be,
minimum of 250.
so it would
Am I
be
saying-
50% or
Because I
200,
think you're-
whichever is.
Greater.
Greater.
Yes, not minimum,
No, no,
because
no,
that
no, no.
changes. If you put
Okay.
minimum,
No, I
it's doing
want-
the opposite of what you're
Yeah,
saying.
no, I want it to be, I don't want it to
That's
have to be
true.
50%. I want it to be, you only need the 250 signatures.
You want it to be a flat 250 regardless.
Well, or, yeah, basically. I mean, I was gonna do the 25%, I just, the 50% is too high, I feel like.
Right. So, the competing arguments for, thank you, for a
Or
flat
like,
250.
I was thinking, honestly, what I was thinking was 25% or 250, whichever's greater, where you have to minimum have that 25, I mean, that 250. I want the 250 no matter what, but 50's too much, you know, if we do greater.
My only issue with that, and it may not be an issue, is what if we have an election in which we have the highest voter turnout we've ever had? Let's say 1,000 people.
Right.
1,000 people. And we say, it's close, maybe it's 45 to 55%, and this guy wins. And so of that number, if we have 1,000, that means 450 voted against him, and they only need 250 votes to recall him, and then it undermines the entire election.
I agree with
That's
her.
my issue.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
That's
No,
why
it makes
the
sense. I
the
just don't
greater
see it
number makes sense, because that accounts for growth of the city, whereas if we put it at a flat rate, then we have to come back in 4 years and change the number.
Yeah,
And I think that's why it's set at that percentage of 50%. Because theoretically, then you're saying that we are now at a point where a number nearly kind of taking majority of who last voted are now saying. And I think that also then makes you pause and you don't recall immediately, which is technically built into there. You have to wait 6 months, I do believe. And so those people that are signing, maybe people that voted for that person, but within the first 6 months, they're like, what are you doing?
Right.
And then, but
Well, I think that's one of the things too. You see these people that run on something, and I've seen it in Rockport happen, watching their stuff, and then they get in there and they flip flop, and
Yeah.
people are mad. But
Yeah, like
that's where.
they flip-flop.
So just to clarify, what I was saying would be the 25% or 250, whichever's greater. So the 25, if you had
Okay.
1,000, or
Okay.
if you had 5,000, it's still going to be the 25%, not the
Okay.
250.
okay.
I don't
It would
think
be the
300 signatures would be too little.
It's not. It would, yeah, 250 would always be the least amount of signatures
Okay,
that are
I
needed.
get your point,
If it's, yeah, 250 would always be the least amount you would have to have. And that's just if, say we had an election and it's 100 people. Well, to recall, you're still gonna need 250 signatures.
Okay. I got it.
I'll vote yes for 300 people, but I think 250 is too low of a threshold, personally. I just think it's too low of a threshold with the growth that's projected in Aransas Pass in this whole area. I think that it's too low of a threshold, personally.
It's a projection, a number of
Well,
votes would cast. It's a projection.
Agreed.
Well, how about we go in the middle? Let's do 275.
Well, for me, I think if somebody's gonna remove somebody from office, the threshold needs to be pretty high. Just like they did when they were selling the harbor. And again, I don't know what the terms were when they sold the harbor, but this community
Now,
I was
agreed.
told it was
Two
not
play
that
to
why
that
this was
argument.
changed, but I wasn't around then, so I don't
Two-
really know for sure. That's just what I was told.
To play to that argument, just as a reminder, because then I have to remind myself to soothe myself in my thoughts, this would not be, we got the signatures and you're out. It's,
No,
we
right,
got
it's
the
a part.
signatures and now we have to vote again.
And there's still an election on it.
Yeah, you gotta pay for an election on that
Yeah,
too.
that- but I mean, so
But
it's
that
not
costs
gonna be
money.
that, people aren't just gonna just sign it, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And not even the same people that necessarily were against that person in an election is gonna sign it. Because like I said, a lot of people don't want their names on those petitions. But I just think that what's up there is that's protecting up here only, and it's not protecting the citizen's voice. And that's what the purpose of the charter's for, is to remind everyone that the citizens are in charge. Without being rampant, like, you know what I mean? That's why you don't want just the 10%, which a lot of places have just the percentage, and I'm like, that 10%, that wouldn't be hard. Let's.
That would be 60 signatures.
Yeah, that would be nothing to go get. That wouldn't, you know, and even just the 25% on its own could be easy at times. But as we have growth, that kind of protects it, where at a minimum, you're always gonna have that 250. But it could be more. It's gonna be whichever's greater. So we're just rephrasing, we're just changing the numbers up there. It's still gonna have the greater, or what I'm looking at, but changing it to 25% total votes or 250, whichever's greater. So always would have to have the 250.
We don't have a motion on the floor yet.
Then I'm gonna make a motion to change the recall procedures to having to have 25% of, I can't read it there.
25% and
Percent of the
250.
total number of votes cast in the last regular city election, or 250, whichever is greater.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
All right, that passed. All right.
Man, we spend a lot of time on the election stuff.
It's important.
It's not about it.
No, it's not, it's good.
All right, now we get to that 6-month limitation
Okay.
on recall.
Yes.
Currently says no recall petition can be filed within 6 months after they take office.
I think I had something on there, didn't I, for 3 months, but I don't think that,
But that's
Right,
null, that's null and void if the crimes of moral turpitude deal, falls into place, right? That's
Oh,
it.
yeah, they
right.
forfeit their office at that point. They don't have to be recalled.
I'm good with the 6 months, personally.
I'm fine with 6 months as well.
I mean, I just want to leave it alone,
Yes.
just leave it as is.
6 months, but that's only what, 12 meetings?
Yeah.
They can mess up.
Give or take, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, if y'all want to, I just had on there just to take it out completely, but if y'all want to leave it, I don't care. I mean, I care, but.
No, I think it.
Do you think it needs to be
has
there?
a purpose, you know, you have
Has a
to.
purpose to leave it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
No action?
New action.
All right, now we're getting into the administrative departments. This is Article 6. This is the last article that we said we were going to talk about tonight. At the last meeting, we decided that we would move all of those other departments down into this article and expand the title from city manager up to administration so that we can incorporate them all. And so we have done that in this draft, and we'll go through the comments of those sections as we get
Question.
to them. Yes?
My comments aren't up there.
Your comments aren't included?
No, they're not.
H. Coulter, phrasing is too vague?
Oh, there they are.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't see them on the last one either, and so I was like,
Yeah,
oh.
it's because Word
Yeah.
truncates them so that
Yeah,
it'll
yeah,
fit
yeah.
on the screen.
Yeah,
Once I
exactly.
click on it, it'll expand.
I never doubted you for a second.
You so did.
Had to ask, right? I didn't ask.
All right, fine. Okay, so the first comment, this is really was voted on last time. I just need to resolve this one, and then we can move into the next comment, which is city manager, Elise says, become a resident of the city within 6 months. Hannah says phrasing is too vague, something like reasonable but not to exceed 12 months. And Chief Blanchard commented that we perhaps need a definition of what it means to be a resident. So let me start there with what it means to be a resident. This is the worst concept in law as it affects elected officials and city managers in the whole state, in my opinion, okay? Under state law, you are a resident of any place where you stay, or if you are temporarily removed from that place, but have an intention to return and the ability to return. What does that even mean? That means that, let's just address the elephant in the room. I've heard a lot of people at that podium standing here and say the city manager doesn't live here, he lives in Corpus Christi. Okay, let's take that as a hypothetical. Let's say hypothetically, Gary has a house here in Aransas Pass and a house in Corpus Christi. If he chooses to spend Tuesday night here and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday nights in Corpus Christi, but has an intention to return to Aransas Pass, he's a resident of Aransas Pass under state law. So all of the residency requirements that you want to put in your charter need to be filtered through that understanding. That it is almost impossible to define where someone is a resident of unless you're between their ears. It's their intent that matters more than
Basically, you just have
anything
to have
else.
an address here.
You don't even need to have an address here. You have to have the physical ability to return here. What does that mean?
Physical or financial?
We own a home? or
Return to whatever we define, city limits in this case.
A lease or have a home
You can-
ownership
you
or
can-
a lease?
Ooh, we totally cannot get into property ownership requirements. That all went out with the Civil War and Reconstruction, right?
Because technically they can rent.
Right,
Yeah.
we're not gonna have any property ownership requirements.
Okay, so here I got a question then.
Mhm.
Is there a way, since basically we can phrase it however we want, it's not gonna really gonna matter.
That's
It's a
right,
big
because state law's gonna
loophole.
trump you.
They're gonna do whatever they want,
Yep.
and the fact that he rents a house just helps.
That happened
Um,
here in this town once before where they required the city manager to own property. And it cost the city over $100,000 when they fired him.
Okay, so then here's
Because
my
they had to buy
question.
the house back?
They had to buy the house back
Yeah.
and I
Can we
forget how
do
much it
something
was.
that says, because I think this actually comes up in some of the other ones too, and this would apply to city manager, Blanchard, and the heads. Something that says you have to live within so many minutes or miles within. Can we do something of that sort?
It is common to do that for like emergency responders, and so that's where
Right,
that
so-
concept comes from. However, what does it mean to live within 30 minutes? Because now you just asserted that same residence requirement, you just expanded it to 30 minutes beyond the city. I can still say, I've got a house in San Antonio and a house in, what's 30 minutes away? Taft.
But you don't have to show any proof of residency.
I don't have to show any proof of residency, no. Right? because the definition of my residence is wherever I intend to go. And if there's an available apartment in Taft, I can say, I've got the ability to go rent that apartment tomorrow if I want to. I've got the ability to return. You see what I mean? It's just, now, I do think that you should have a residency requirement in your charter.
Yes.
I do like the idea of saying within 6 months after being hired, as opposed to on the day that you are hired, because that'll expand your pool when it comes time to hire, right? All of that is common in charters. But if it's in your charter, you got to deal with that podium. You got to deal with people coming up here and saying, I don't think Chief Blanchard lives, I don't think the mayor lives in this, I don't think the city manager lives in the city. It's impossible for us to prove otherwise. I dealt with this in another city where a city council member moved out of the house he was living in. It was his mom's house. He got married. His new wife lived on the opposite side of town. We had a rule that said you have to live in your district. He was living with his wife on the other side of town, but he still owned his mom's house. All right? You can't force that person out, unfortunately, under state law, because state law is way too broad.
So is it best for us to go ahead and put how we would want it to be, hypothetically, knowing that
I would change, if I was
state will change to where it makes more sense at some point?
If I was going to change this,
You know,
I would clarify what a reasonable period of time means by adding a specific time limit, and not worry about the fact that they're living within 15 miles or 30 miles or in the city limits or outside. We just say become a resident of the city within 6 months or a year or whatever.
Right. See, and I put on there to change, I don't know if it even has anything on there. They just said a reasonable time. I put 6 months. I felt like that was fair.
Because with the resident, I mean, my question would be, why? We live in Aransas Pass. We are 25 minutes from 5 cities. Like we just established that we have almost like a very small pool to pull from.
Well, it's supposed to be, because if you're running the city, you want that person, their tax.
Well, no, I understand that,
I mean, that's
but
why.
geographically where we
No,
live,
I agree.
is that possible? I mean, like,
Well,
if
I
they
know,
live
like,
in Portland,
you can go
like,
2 miles and you're in the county, but you're in the city, but you're not in the city. You're
part
in
of
the
what
county.
drives me nuts is everybody in Rockport looks at Aransas Pass and scoffs their nose, and everybody in Aransas Pass hates everybody in Rockport because they scoff their nose at us, and we're literally within 25 minutes from each other. And as far as I'm concerned, this whole peninsula, Corpus Christi, and all of it is the same city. Yo. Like, we are a community, and if we're not willing to take people from Corpus because they live in Corpus, that's just silly, in my opinion.
The only bad part about
I mean, I agree, yeah.
I don't care where they live.
When I think
What
same-
care
same
about,
living in the
though,
county
is
kind of
taking
thing.
city-owned property home, buying and giving people gas money. You
I want the best
that's what
candidate.
I want. You want to live somewhere else? Go ahead, fine, but you pay for your own gas.
Yeah.
You don't take our cars back home.
Don't get a gas
And it
allowance.
doesn't-
You don't get a
because-
vehicle allowance.
Yeah, no vehicle allowances, things like that, because even, well, they need to be here in a hurry. Well, if
Unfortunately,
they live out of town, I guarantee you one thing, they're gonna be at the scene last.
Is there
They're gonna
a
be the
way
last person on the
to,
Yeah,
scene.
but what about attracting qualified and very like prolific candidates of what they do? Like, we're limiting our numbers by doing that, and we're not opening the door to people coming from elsewhere to come here to try to make this place better. We're limiting that greatly when we do that and have that mindset.
Well,
in my
I'm hoping
opinion.
that we could get them to come here, like you just said, and make this place better. Come here and make this place better.
Right,
We
but
want
if-
you to be a part of this community, especially if we're paying you.
Yeah, but man, if I'm shopping
I
around
understand
and like the house I happen to buy is just happens to be between Aransas Pass and Ingleside because that's what I can afford, and that's the type, like, I personally like a big yard, so I didn't buy anywhere that was less than an acre. Personally, that was me. But then if
and you
that,
can't buy
that
that in
type,
the city limits very.
right, that's my point. I'm not saying that you don't. I'm in agreement with what everybody's saying, but I'm also saying that we
Right.
shouldn't shut the door to people that are qualified and want to come here and do good.
So, Thomas, what do you, on a legal aspect, what do you propose, hearing what everyone's saying? We really can't say,
Well, he's just told us it's a nice thing to put, but you can't enforce it.
Pretty
yeah,
much.
so, but he's also said that we should still have something.
Yeah.
I think the 6
So with
months
that
I'm
being
able
said,
to that.
can something be in there?
My only issue with
entirely-
reasonable was too vague for me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Entirely y'all's decision. I will tell a story, though, about a city manager interview I sat in on one time. And the city manager candidate in a city that did not have a residency requirement, they asked, you plan on moving to our city? And she said, yes, I'm going to live in your city, because if I'm proposing a tax rate for the citizens of the city, I need to feel the same pain they do. That was the
is
strongest
why we
answer
want
I've
them to
ever
live here.
heard for
Yes.
why you want your city manager to live in the city.
That's the candidate I want.
And not everybody has that.
And that's
Not
why I
everybody has
say,
that. That's a big one.
as
That's integrity.
as a home rule city, I like having a residency requirement. You just have to understand that it's largely unenforceable, and it can lead to the situation that I'm seeing in Aransas Pass right now, where people are raising allegations that just don't matter. Because even if it's 100% true.
Well, that's good, I mean,
it's-
I agree with you, it needs to be in there, but I think that that's just gonna have to, by having it in there, then that's just something that council and anyone that's up here is gonna have to listen to, and then maybe they need to vet our city managers and staff a little better if that's
Yep.
something that's important, and they need to emphasize that it's important for them to feel that, and,
I think the
It's
conversation has coalesced around two possibilities. One is removing the language entirely, and the other is keep the language but define what a reasonable period of time is. And I think we just need a motion on one or the other of those.
Do we want to put
Well,
6 months?
6 months, I'm good at.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dennis.
As an official, you are responsible to be living in the city. As a matter of concern that if you are affected by major fires or emergency conditions and you're responsible for your division, then you have to be here. That's a responsibility. I believe I read it in here, that's
Part of the
your
response.
requirement. As far as a resident like myself, I can come and go. You got my label, wear a mask. You can go by my post office address. They do legally allow for you to use a post office, or at least they used to. I'm not positive
To define
now, it's
residence.
still required.
Yeah.
But you can use a post office address.
Yeah.
Live where you please.
All right, so I think all we're missing is a motion.
I make a motion
And
that we
specify
add,
a length of time, please.
that,
She's going to.
I make a motion that we add on to Article 6, Section 1 of the city manager, that they must live in this, be a resident of the city within 6 months.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay.
All right.
Just real quick on that, I want to ask you something, just kind of puts it out there too for council or whoever. Now, kind of picking up on what Mr. Peacock was saying, say, you know, we can't enforce it or whatever, someone lives in Corpus and we have an emergency and that city manager or whoever we need to be here and they don't get here because they're too far away, that's deems for being fired, I would imagine.
Yeah, I totally agree. Absolutely.
And so maybe you can't fire them because they don't live or they don't reside, or how do you prove that? If they present issues because of them not being where they're supposed to be in a timely manner, I would imagine that being
That is a
Deemable.
potential terminable offense, whether it's in the charter or not.
right. And so
Right.
that's what I just want to make sure that
Yeah,
like
it doesn't
at
need to
least
be
we
in
know
the
that
charter.
and kind of clarify for those that okay, there's still other
Could be in
ways
the charter
around
that
it.
it needs to be reviewed though by council. I mean,
That
if
what,
if somebody.
The council doesn't know our charter as it is.
Well, yeah, you got a good point there, but I mean, if there's like, hey, say there's favoritism going on, and hey, it's all right, don't worry about it, you're a little late, we're not even gonna review it. Shouldn't we have something in there that says, no, if this is being
Oh, I see what you're saying.
neglected, yeah, if their duties and responsibilities are being neglected because of the distance they live, shouldn't it at least be reviewed? Instead of, we're just gonna sweep it under the rug, don't worry about it. Is there any wording?
I
that
think
we
you're
can put in there
talking-
to just-
What kind of emergency are we talking
Dereliction of
about?
duty, but that would not
Any scenario, I mean, the only thing I can
pertain
think
to
of is like a hurricane where everybody's gone.
Fire. I mean, you
Like,
never know. I
You
don't.
know,
I mean,
so, but that's what I'm
I don't
wondering,
know.
is if it's so hypothetical.
It was totally hypothetical,
Yeah.
just to kind of put a blanket out there that like, we may not have control over this, but there's still control in it.
Right, and that's
You
just,
know what I
to go
mean?
back to my point a little bit, like, we have 5 cities within 20 minutes of here, like, you know, for somebody to live somewhere else and not be able to make it here, we got way bigger problems than them being in our town, like, shit.
Well, not because they're out of town, I'm saying that they're just
Right,
whatever.
I
right,
have
but if you're
one-
saying there's a chronic problem them showing up. is that-
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, or they're, you know, and then they're.
But I mean, that's dereliction of duty, that's a different,
Yeah.
they're not performing their
Okay.
duty at that point.
Well,
Okay.
In regards to your hypothetical, and this is purely just my question, you said that if they cannot get here, should it be terminated? What if that person's on vacation? Are you still?
Oh,
going
no,
to
I don't mean like
terminate
that. I
them, or
mean
are you
like
just talking
no,
about
because
them
if there's
living?
something and they should have been here in a timely manner and they're not because they chose, because we're saying now they reside where we can't start to say, so maybe they chose to live and it's 2 hours away. Like, who are we to say now? People commute.
Yeah.
I'm saying they don't get here until 2 hours can be a long time in the middle of whatever the hypothetical crisis is. And if it's because they decided that they're staying too much at their other residence, that's enough to me. Like,
Right.
this is too hypothetical, but like, you know what I mean? I'm just saying there are ways to still have control in a situation that we have no control over.
And what I would say
If
about
there's an
this whole
issue.
conversation is council can already do all of that
Right.
without it being codified into charter.
Okay.
Okay, council can say, hey, you didn't show up when we had this earthquake. Why not? Oh, because I was too far away and I couldn't get here.
Yeah.
You do that 2 or 3 times, council's gonna start saying,
Yeah.
we gotta do something about this, right? I don't recommend putting in there mandatory language that council shall terminate if the city manager is unable to show
Because
up
they
for.
can, that's already in there that they can terminate.
Right.
Well,
Whatever reason.
Number 6, performs such other duties as may be prescribed.
That's
That
right.
blanket.
As
There we
long
go,
as it's
perfect.
discretionary, council can already do it. Okay, so
Okay, here we go. Yeah.
the next comment is in change to shall by vote of the majority of members.
No, the city
Explain what
manager
you
shall
want.
not be appointed for a definite term is what I was putting for that.
Oh, you want that to say shall
Shall
not
not,
be
yeah.
appointed for a definite term.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the definite term language here is something that you see in a lot of charters. And the difference between definite term and indefinite term is what's typically described. Either you're appointing your city manager for a year or 2, or we're appointing you and we'll fire you whenever we get around to it, but we're not going to do. Most employees, when you hire them, you say, you're hired, and you're hired from that point until you're fired. Okay, that's called an indefinite term. Here, because it says definite, when council hires the city manager, they're supposed to say, we're hiring you for a 2-year term, or a 1-year term, or a 6-year term. It doesn't say how long that term can be. But it needs to be definite.
It needs to say definite?
Right now, your charter says definite.
Right.
Shall be appointed for a definite term, not an indefinite term.
Okay, so,
And at the end of that 2-year term or whatever it is, then they would have
So
to
we
be
either-
rehired.
okay, so we either need to put
Re-up.
however many years are in there, or,
Well, it would be decided by council, but definite just means that it's not indefinite, meaning for forever,
Yeah.
or whenever.
Yeah.
It just,
Indefinite means they can terminate them anytime they decide they should,
Yep.
but they don't have to at the end of a definite period.
Yes.
my note on there was just the end part of that sentence.
Okay, before we get to your note, let's deal with this. Do y'all feel the need to change to an indefinite term instead of a definite term?
Yes.
No.
because indefinite means we're not having a contract, and they can let go whenever
Right.
they want, and we're not gonna have to pay the rest of that contract out,
Yep.
correct?
Yes.
Indefinite means we're hiring you now
And we can,
until you
We-
leave. Now
Okay.
that
I have a
doesn't,
question.
that you just brought a completely different concept in when you used the word contract.
yeah.
You can be hired under a definite term or an indefinite term with or without a contract. It doesn't matter, all right?
Okay.
Contract is a completely separate issue.
Gotcha. This was, my reason for putting that was to protect the city, that if, say, we have a city manager, or any employee, head or whatever, and we decide he's not doing an adequate, or she's not doing an adequate job, and we let them go, we're not having to give all these months of pay and all this
Yep.
stuff because they're locked in a contract.
But the city
Yeah.
council can already do
That's
that.
what I was trying to protect.
This next phrase that I've just highlighted on the screen, I think covers the protection you're looking for, but may be removed at the will and pleasure of the city council by a vote of the majority of the entire council. Even if I hire you for a definite term, and I'm real generous and I give you a 6-year term, I can fire you tomorrow
Right.
with a majority vote of council.
But would they still have to, would they have to fulfill the
No.
a pay requirement on that?
Now you're talking about a contract.
Yeah.
If it is It totally depends on how they were hired. If they were hired that we're going to put you on a contract for 6 years and you will
Okay,
be
is there a
paid-
way to put in there something that is letting us be able to let people go and not,
No contract?
But that's how the
No
contract is
contract,
written
I
up,
guess.
is what he's saying. He's saying, what you're talking about is written in the contract if they were to sign and be hired that way. And what, I think what he's
Yeah.
saying is that we don't hire via contract.
No, we do.
We hire, but
Not always.
a definite time, if I'm
it's, well,
understanding
I'm
correctly. I could be
understanding it
wrong.
differently.
This charter provision does not address whether there will be a parachute clause. Let's call it a golden parachute, right? That we have to pay you out the rest of your contract. But that concept only exists in state law if they have a written employment contract.
Do we do that?
I don't know. This doesn't require an employment contract, nor does it prohibit an employment contract. And I will tell you that across the state, more and more city managers are getting written employment contracts. It's pretty common these days for a city manager to have a written employment contract. There's even a form document that's prepared by TCMA, the Texas City Managers Association, that typically the candidate will walk in and say, here's my contract, review it, and I'll sign it, okay? That is pretty common. More and more candidates are insisting on having a contract because they want to be protected from the next election, right? I lived under that. Well, I was appointed by council. It was a 7-member council.
Yeah.
If I had 5 members in support of me and we had an election, man, the election I could be out of my ear in a heartbeat. And so I insisted that they give me an employment contract. And that said, go ahead, fire me after the next election, but you're going to have to pay out the rest of the contract.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's what I'm trying to prevent on.
I feel like that doesn't give us good candidates.
If you,
Or how to word it. I'm sorry, what?
Then we get then we're not attracting the best people. You know, we're trying to do better here. We're trying to get better candidates and better heads of departments and everything. And to have that, we have to pay those people what they're worth. Like,
Oh, I'm not worried about paying them for what they're worth.
but what he's
I'm-
saying is he wouldn't have taken the job unless we signed that contract. That's what he's saying.
and
I agree.
most sophisticated city managers will require that these days. They will require an employment contract.
Okay.
I would not put in the charter that you're requiring an employment contract, because you might get a candidate come along and says, oh, I don't care, I don't need a contract.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hire that guy. But the sophisticated, trained city managers across the state typically are members of TCMA, and they typically will show up with that contract in
They already
hand.
know what they want.
They already know what they want, because they're sharing war stories with each other. They all know that that's how they protect themselves.
Because we're stuck. We want better and do better, but we have to spend money to do that.
Yeah.
Like,
But
unfortunately.
like
I
I
don't
said,
have a
that's-
problem spending money. I have a problem spending money if we let someone go and then we're paying 2 city managers.
Right. I mean,
That's
I
where-
agree-
that's
I
where
agree-
my-
I agree
that's where
with
I'm
you.
at, and I
I
think-
agree with you 100%. I don't want to
Yeah.
do that either.
No, and it's not about, I mean, I'm all about paying, like, I want the best, you know what I mean? But what we can afford.
Yeah.
But I just don't want to pay the double. So I'm just looking to.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know the terminology that would be, if there isn't even a way to do it. So on this one, we may just. be-
No action?
No action.
Okay.
Unless y'all have anything,
So
we're
we're
all
saying-
sad right now.
I mean, I agree with you.
Somebody
I just
know
don't
that.
want to stifle
Yeah,
good
no,
candidates
I'm
coming
with you.
here.
Yeah, I want to attract the right people. I just don't want to pay 2 people.
I agree with you 100%. I just don't know how we have both.
I agree with you, but how much more do we pay for quality people? How we know they're gonna be quality?
Yeah,
Everybody's
we
quality
pay-
when they
we
come
Well,
in.
they have a
more for
resume.
someone
I
to
mean,
come back.
Yeah, you know.
They already left us.
the proof should be in their results of their previous job, in my opinion.
My thought is that by putting indefinite, you can have a contract for 2 years, you can have a contract for 1 year, you can have no contract. Indefinite leaves you with the option to negotiate with that candidate and decide.
I would say that the way it's written right now as a definite term allows you to negotiate, because it doesn't say how long that definite term shall be. 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. If you changed this to say indefinite, then you could not negotiate 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. It would automatically be open-ended.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Do you know what we typically do for contracts right now?
I do not know. The standard around the state is 2 years. The standard is you give a 2-year contract to the city manager, and then you renew it every year.
But you're saying you don't suggest putting something in there that says 2-year?
I do not recommend. You want to leave it as flexible as possible.
Okay.
No action.
Okay, before we jump down to that, because I think mine was combined with hers.
Okay.
Mine was just a question about the end of that sentence, and it looks like it was combined with hers because it wasn't about that front with the definite term. It was about the ending with the word entire council, and I just had a question because we did this in an early article of it not being the entire council, but rephrased as the majority of the council present and voting.
Yes, and I think it's written this way on purpose.
Okay.
Because if you're a city manager on the rocks, and Jason doesn't show up at a meeting, it's easier to fire you.
Okay.
Okay. And they don't want someone to just not vote.
We want it to be stable. We want all of the council members to have a vote on this. And so it provides more stability.
I'm good with that.
I mean,
Okay, that answers-
That makes
sense.
logical sense to me.
all right. The next comment then is add another item to the list of powers and duties of the city manager to say, number 7, faithfully execute all the laws of the city, state that are applicable. I just rephrased it for you, but that's basically what it is. Elise, you want to talk about this one?
Just want something in there stating, it's kind of putting somebody in charge of the charter for following it, that there is a responsibility. Somebody's shoulders it goes on because I think that's what we've seen is that the charter hasn't been followed and kind of everyone passes the buck on who's supposed to enforce or make sure we're following charter, and it should be the city manager. And so it's in the charter, this is your responsibility. Make sure that we're following it.
Mm-hmm.
So, any comments?
I like that.
Does that sound good to y'all?
Transparency and accountability.
Okay.
Why don't we take these 3 comments individually and get a motion on just adding the comment that says add 7. He shall see that all laws, provisions of the charters and acts of the council subject to enforcement by him are faithfully executed.
Okay.
I like that, I like number 7. I'll motion that we accept, add number 7.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay? Then add 8, he shall keep a written inventory of all real property and all permanent equipment belonging to the city, and said inventory to be subject to annual audit. A system shall be established to control the use and replacement of expendable items.
Okay,
Isn't
I
that-
don't, on this, I don't know if that's already being done, it may be, I know, I just heard of past where there was equipment and it was like, oh, we didn't even know we had that, or we have this and it's broke down and it could be sold. There should be where at any time if a citizen wants to know how many tractors or how much equipment do we own, they have that access, or it's known, somebody knows what we own.
Most directors know that information. So
Who does?
The city manager just needs to ask that director.
Okay, so that, but now that is being done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I still like it being in there, personally. I don't know if y'all care.
So you're saying this, the department heads have this list and the city manager doesn't know because he hasn't asked them?
Right.
Okay, all right.
So,
So all he has to do is go ask, like, this is all readily available to whoever wants to find out the information.
Correct.
y'all have any thoughts on it? Want it in there, not in there? Do you care?
You do like.
I mean, it's just something for, I mean, if we're doing it now, that's great, but as you found your new, head of department, it probably wasn't up to your standards when you came in, you just.
Mine had nothing to start with, so I'm starting at 0.
Exactly, so it'd be nice to, if we had something.
I have a question. So what if we, so she's, I mean, like, so I can see how that could like make more work. Obviously, all he has to do is go to the department heads or whatever, but what about just adding something that the inventory maintained by the departments is audited every 2 years or something? I'm just suggesting something here. I don't know. A compromise maybe, but.
I don't have a problem with the language that's written here as it's proposed. I'll tell you that when I was in-house in the city of Victoria, the city maintained a master list of fixed assets, right? Anything that was a permanent piece of equipment. And every year, at the end of the year, the finance department would send out a list to my department that says, here's what's on your list of fixed assets. Do you still have those things? Check yes or no. Did you buy anything else? Add it to the list. And then I would send it back in. And it was all maintained in a central. It's really easy to do.
So do we just not do it?
It's not a major requirement that you're adding onto the city manager.
All right, well, I'm all for it.
Would it be a completely new thing, or would it be something that's tacked on to 3 or 4? Just out of curiosity. 3 is prepare and submit to the council as the end of the fiscal year, a complete report on the finances and administrative activities of the city. You can also tack on assets, or however you want to phrase it, or even on number 4, which is keep the council advised of financial conditions and future needs. Or would it need to be its own, a completely separate one?
It doesn't, the way 3 and 4 are written, they are ambiguous as to whether they would include that fixed asset. I think we could bring 3 CPAs in and get 3 different opinions about whether or not the financial condition of the city includes the stated.
But I mean, could we add on language that adds that to there?
We can put it there, yeah, we can put it into there if you
Yeah.
want to clarify it.
Would it be better being put in there, because it feels like that's something that falls into that area because it's so ambiguous, and we could define it, or would
Sure.
it need to be a completely separate one? Which would be the better option?
I like yours. Add it into what we
I don't have a
already
preference.
existed.
As long as it gets done, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't have a preference. If you want to combine 8 into 3 and 4,
Yeah.
you just make the motion that way. Add 8 into 3 and 4.
I'm with you.
I'm good with that.
And I'll figure out where to write it and how to make it work, and you can come back and review it next time.
Okay, so I make a motion to add 8 into 3 or 4.
That's second.
I'll second, yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, and then number 9 in that list, shall ensure that the city master plan is maintained and all changes approved by city council. Now, this is one where I will give some little feedback. I'm actually probably going to turn to Brenda without giving her any advance warning at all. The city master plan is a document that's required by state law if you have zoning, which we do. So we are required to have a master plan.
Which we don't.
We do, actually.
We do.
Do we have an updated one?
No, we have one that was written in 2018.
Okay, but that's
that
what
they
not
only
what I said.
pretend
I said an
sometimes we
updated one.
have.
And
A current one.
You want to talk about?
I thought it was every 3 years.
And what the
No,
city.
10 years.
10
But now they're
years?
going to do 20.
For the master plan?
So we had one back in 2018 that was a 10-year plan. And for, now I don't know, like I said, I'm new. For some reason, they decided not to wait for the whole 10 years to go before they started doing another one. They're doing it now. So we are more than halfway, actually, we're at the final stages of the update of the comprehensive plan. But this one will be for 20 years instead of 10. And so we put it in the newspaper for the past 2 weeks that there's going to be a final public meeting tomorrow at 6 o'clock. And there was a video sent out on Monday so that it's circulating. I think they've had about 1,000 views already. So I'm hoping that people will come out.
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the Civic Center. And I know the weather might be really bad. I know a lot of people might not go, but I will be there to give a presentation on all the other community meetings that we've had and what people have expressed that they want to see and how they want to see the city grow. And so that will implement, and then once we get the comprehensive plan ready, then we'll change all of our zoning codes and all of our codes and ordinances that we have to match what the comprehensive plan has. Because that's the problem that's what we've been having for years, is that we've had these new master plans, but we've never changed the codes. So then people come into like, well, your master plan says A, but your code says B, and then they're like, oh, we don't want to have to deal with having to go through planning and zoning and city council and a variance and this and that. And so people have washed their hands and not wanted to come back to this Aransas Pass. So our steps are revamp the master plan, clean up the codes to match that, and then incorporate all that in a new capital improvements plan so that we can get the city up and running smoothly.
Will there be maps there
Yes.
tomorrow? And they'll show like kind of what y'all are thinking for the
Yes.
zoning and.
At the Civic Center, 6 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay.
Brenda, what happens to the grant works plan that's 10 years? What happens to it?
Once this one gets adopted, it gets put away.
Yeah, because there was 5 years left on it.
Mhm.
But once the new one gets adopted, that will no longer be. in
And the
effect.
new one's for 20 years?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's common, by the way, to adopt a new plan before the last one expires. You typically see these things rolling. In my experience, I'm used to seeing a 20-year master plan that gets updated every 10 years. And so you work the first half of it, and then you kind of reassess where you are, and you look further ahead.
Yeah, because it's not it's not necessarily are those things going to happen by those dates.
Right.
Which I've seen on the last master what it's going to do with budget and.
Yeah. And
Things that come out
I've
of
seen 5-year window, like a capital improvement plan,
Kind of a
would
wish
typically be a
list.
smaller, yeah. And so I think that the city is doing a good job of this, but if you want to lock it down and make sure they're doing it by putting it in the charter, go right ahead. I'm just telling you, they're doing it anyway
Honestly, I
because
think
it's
it's more of a wish list, but I thought it was, it's more for, not what's currently going on, because I know we're working on one, but for future, and if someone
Yeah.
comes in another, you know what I mean, just saying, hey, like you said, we didn't even, a lot of people didn't even know we had one. But that goes back to the website, because if you look up master
Oh, I
plan,
know,
you're not
it's-
gonna find
The
it.
website's terrible. They're already working on
But-
that, so it's all.
But yeah.
So no action on 9?
Do y'all think it needs to be in there? Do we care?
I'm not hearing a whole
No.
lot of.
No, I'm
So-
good, personally.
Just-
All right.
Okay.
They already do that.
No action.
Heads of departments and city manager, this is a provision I have not seen in other charters before, to say that one person can be over 2 departments,
Yeah.
and if necessary, the city manager can be over the department. If the charter was silent on this issue, then one person could serve as the department head of 2 departments, and the city manager could serve as the department head as necessary. I don't think that.
Is that written
this-
for smaller cities, like maybe when we were smaller?
It was
I don't
modified
think
in
this adds
86.
anything
Yeah.
to the charter, nor do I think it limits you in any way, right? The city manager can head 1 or more departments. So like if Brenda leaves and we need the city manager to be the interim planning director until we can hire a new planning director, that's fine, you can do that. I don't think it needs to be in the charter, and I don't think this hurts in any way either. This to me is a no action unless there's something specifically you want to see.
I just wanted to change that if that was gonna be the case and someone was going to be over 2 departments, that it went through council. So
Okay.
that they were aware of it and it wasn't just, you know what I mean? So that there's a little more structure in it of,
Here's the problem, or the pushback I would give you on that. There are 4 positions in the charter that are defined as positions that council has say over. City manager, city secretary, city attorney, and judge. Other than that, typically city managers have the authority to add, subtract, rearrange departments however they want to. Maybe your public works director is over streets and utilities. Maybe streets is its own department with a department head. Maybe utilities is its own department with its own department head. Typically, city managers have broad discretion to rearrange those departments as necessary. So then, if you say we have to go back to city council approval,
there's a lot.
I'm just going to redraw the lines of the departments instead of saying that the public works director is now also the head of the utility
So
department.
should we just remove it altogether, just to clean up the charter?
Yeah, let's remove it. Yeah, I mean, you just flat out told us we didn't need it.
Why-
Yeah, I don't want,
Remove it.
if it's just something for someone to be able to read that's gonna,
But at the
Cause
same time, would it cause confusion at the voting booth when somebody reads it and they're like, okay, well, I'm voting for this because we're taking it out, which means that you can't be the head of 2 departments at once.
That's why I think it's been in here since 1986. Since it doesn't hurt anything to be in there, do we want to stick it in front of the voters? I mean, stick it in front of the voters. They vote up, they vote down. It's really not going to matter. It's not going to change anything.
I mean, does our
Doesn't
city
affect
manager
rate of pay
actually?
or anything,
I mean, I don't care either way.
right?
Honestly,
Doesn't
I just,
affect rate of pay or
wanted
anything.
clarification on
Nobody
it.
gets extra money for doing an extra department, correct?
Well,
Because that was
that's-
my kind of thing. Are they?
I don't know. That's up to that assignment,
City
right?
manager.
See,
So-
yeah, that's
That
that's
was
where I'm
my
trying-
intent of like,
But if you're doing.
Hire manage your own job, manage your own department, do your own thing. They should, they should be delegate somebody else in charge, like the assistant should do it.
I mean, that's what-
Say, chief of police has enough to do on his own plate. I think the assistant chief should be head of, what is that, public safety? Right? Because he's in charge of public safety,
And like,
but yeah.
public works is public
Public work,
works,
and,
planning develops, development.
Yeah, that's my thing. And then also to give other people other opportunities to manage in this city. So that they can become reliable in other departments if we need them.
I mean, isn't the city's manager's job to coordinate between department heads? It's
Well,
not
the way
his
it
job
says
to
right now,
manage
it
the
says
department,
2 or more
right?
departments.
His job is to manage all the departments.
No,
That's
no,
like
no, but
the
it-
definition of the job. I've heard that
Yeah,
Texas
yeah,
home
yeah.
rule, like they don't even mention once the city manager managing a department ever in the whole section regarding that.
Right.
They specifically say his job is to coordinate between the department heads. And if we have, My question was, how many departments do we have managed by the same person? Because I want one guy. I want him doing that job and managing that department well.
I'm with you.
I'm with you. I think that was the.
It shouldn't be under multiple departments, in my opinion.
When
Yeah,
I
I
was
agree.
the director of public works, my job was mostly to keep the city manager out of hot water with the public.
And that's
Dennis,
your
Dennis, did you have something you wanted to add?
The city manager in every city I've ever been in and worked in was the head. He was the man. He had it all. And it's his job with the city secretary to maintain and keep the place in order.
So does
All
this,
division heads.
I'm sorry, so does this rise to the level that y'all want to do anything about it?
Do y'all want to put it in there that he needs to talk to council or not? Or he or she, whoever it's going to be? I mean, mine was just word like,
I mean, if I was going to do anything, I would personally want to get rid of it because I don't think anybody should be heading more than one department, nor the city manager.
But
should be
getting
heading
rid of
one.
it wouldn't be getting rid of it, it would just
Yeah,
be.
that's right.
It would just take it out of it.
They can still run
To
two
do
departments.
what you just said, we
Fair
would
enough.
have to change this to say that one person cannot.
I mean, well, that was my suggestion.
okay, so
My
to change it, he
suggestion
can only run.
That is his suggestion.
Well, if you
I
want
just
to make a
wanna
motion on
say-
that, that's fine too.
But
I just wanted to state that when, for example, the times that we have not had a city manager here, a department head have been chosen to be the interim, and they've been having to run both their department and city manager.
Right.
But I feel like interim is a extenuating circumstance. I mean, that
Yeah.
shouldn't be, that should
That's-
have its own set of rules.
That's the
correct?
way I would look at that too.
That's
Interim is different. We're not talking about interim situations.
Yeah, I want one guy.
Well, you know what,
in one
I kind of
department.
do think that it might need to say this. Do we really want like the city manager also running like the planning and development? Like, do we want them
Because
to
then
have two roles?
Whatever department he's heading is going to get more money.
I want a non-hypothetical situation. Do we have somebody running two departments, and what's the argument for them running two departments? Are they two smaller departments? Because
Now,
Or
I
two
haven't
positions,
seen it, I
'cause-
haven't seen it here in this city, but I have seen it in others, where especially in what is planning, building, and public works, and they're all under a development services director. But sometimes the development services director also runs either planning or building or public works, so they do too.
And I've seen it in some cities where public works sometimes includes streets, other times doesn't, depending on whether or in engineering, right? So,
And in those cities, are they smaller than us? Would we come in, if we were to eliminate that and say, no, everybody, there needs to be one person who's in charge of each department. They don't need to oversee multiple departments. Can that in any way, shape, or form come back and bite us in the butt?
They've been at bigger cities, the ones I've seen.
bigger cities is
Okay,
what I've seen.
okay.
Yeah.
It would come
And-
back to bite you in a bigger city, is what you mean?
Well, no, that, the examples in which they had two departments are in
Yeah.
bigger cities.
I would just say that this entire discussion is esoteric unless you can define for me what is a department. How do we know that Public Works over streets and utilities? Is he over two departments, streets and utilities, or is he just over one department, Public Works? I don't know, right? Unless you tell me that a department is defined as one of these 9 things, and we list them all. But I would not do that at the charter level, because that takes away the city manager's flexibility to manage the
Just leave it
city.
alone.
Yeah,
At one time, we had one person in charge of streets, public works, and water and sewer.
Yeah.
And that's all public works.
Yeah.
So how could we accomplish that the city manager is the city manager and not the head of a department? He's supposed to be the head of all departments. So how could we accomplish that? Instead of, this wording says that he can be the city manager and head 2 departments at once, which again, doesn't make sense. It's contradictory to each other because he's heading all the departments, but it seems to me like,
But if he's
you know,
running
if I'm the city
public
manager
works
and like
and-
roads and utilities are my department, guess who's getting the most money? Roads and utilities, you know, not that's a
To
bad
accomplish
thing. but-
that, to accomplish that goal, I would add language along the lines that says, except in temporary interim situations, the city manager shall not be the head of any department.
Let's do that.
yeah.
I like that.
Something
So
like
just
that.
change the second phrase after that semicolon to that. Is that what we're saying?
I believe so. That the city manager may not head any department individually or whatever.
You phrase it.
Make
That's his job. My suggestion. His job, Frank.
You make the motion.
Oh, I make a motion to change the wording of the city manager's duties in section 4 here, to not allow him to head a department as opposed to heading one or more departments.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Okay.
Turn this backwards.
You didn't see that going so long.
That was it. That was it.
All right. The next comment, I believe, is Hector's. City council shall have the right to appoint the city secretary, and in such appointment, you want it to be absolute right to appoint whomsoever the council deems advisable. You want to explain your desire there?
Because it said whatsoever the council may deem advisable to the position. Shouldn't it say whom instead of whatsoever?
Where are we?
So this is
I don't
section
know.
6 that got moved, that we voted to
Yeah,
move.
it's not on your
utilities?
paper. You
Yeah.
can't look at your
Yeah,
paper.
don't look at your paper,
you
only
have
look
to
at the screen.
Right. We're in new section 5 of Article 7, which is city
Oh,
secretary. It was previously further up. But the concern here, I don't see the whatsoever language that you're concerned about. Have the right to appoint a city secretary in such appointment gives such consideration to the city manager. Have the right to appoint. Oh, I see what you, right there.
Yeah, whatsoever. Should it be whomsoever?
Yes.
Right, whomsoever.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Do we care enough to ask the voters to make a grammar change?
I don't know. Do we?
Does it have any legal implications?
Yeah, does it have any kind of?
Then no.
It doesn't have any legal implications. You're right as a matter of grammar. The old English teacher in me agrees with you 100%. I just don't think that the voters are going to understand what's the big deal.
Okay. All right, that's part
Is
of my
there a
business.
way to do where we can vote on like, where, I think one of those props where we could do it as cleaning up the language?
Prop B. Yeah, Prop B is going to be, I'm going to try to consolidate a
Is that
bunch
what
of
Paul
these
said,
small
right?
things where we're just eliminating redundancies and things that are unclear.
Okay.
That's what I'll do. I'll make that Prop B.
Do we need to make a motion, or is that just, it's already
I-
covered?
Yeah, we've already made a motion on that earlier, right?
I think we kind of did a blanket one.
Yeah.
On the property.
So,
Yeah.
all right, that's my comment again about moving things here. My
Yeah, 'cause
next
it's not
comment
gonna be in- it's
here,
not-
If
we
you
don't
have
these.
the paper from, that they gave us last week, it's the last page, or the second
From the
one.
last one?
Yeah, this with all our notes.
Where's that? Do we have it in the charter?
It is,
Oh, is that
but it's
all
because
moved
we
away?
moved it from section, or Article 3 into Article 6.
oh yeah, what page is that on?
If there's
Yeah.
six, it's gonna be moved
Page-
around.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, it's it's 7
Seven.
at the bottom of last week's
Last
packet.
week's. And it's page 7.
It'll be on this week's packet too. That was,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Page 7 of this week's
Page
packet
6,
2.
okay, the section titled 15, section 15 municipal court.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
All right, and my comment here, and this can be a Prop B thing as well, is that there's a reference here to municipal corporation recorder courts. We used to call municipal courts recorder courts back in like the 40s. And so I think we just need to update that to say municipal court, like state law has done everywhere else. And so I can just drop that into Prop B if y'all are comfortable with that.
You have thoughts? Yeah, please.
In municipal court, subparagraph C, it says, "The city secretary or a deputy shall be the ex officio clerk of said court." The municipal court clerk right now is Araceli. She is an employee of the municipal court, not of the city secretary's office. I have not seen any city of this size, any city that is home rule size, say that the city secretary is the clerk of the court. City secretary is typically a completely separate job. Court is a completely different process. And so I would recommend simply deleting this language entirely. It's not the way the city's set
I've
up now.
lost where we're at, but you're saying the
Page eight.
court clerk
Court clerk and city secretary should be two different things, and are two different things.
And they
currently.
are.
Yeah, but this says they're the same thing.
Oh, I can't.
Yeah, this says that the city secretary or a deputy shall be the clerk of the court.
Oh, okay, I agree.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's not right.
So if we could just get a motion in a second to remove that.
I make a motion to remove the language that says the city secretary is the court clerk.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Special attorney, okay, in the city attorney's office now. Doug has a comment about special attorneys. Is there a cap on special attorney fees is your question?
Correct. Well, my question is that and then to caveat on that, or what the answer would spur my suggestion on a modification, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like,
the
I
answer
feel
is
like
no, there's no cap.
Okay. Is it publicly disclosed to the citizens? Like, all right, so just for an example, the city's being sued let's say because of negligence.
Yeah.
On the city's part, or well,
Yeah.
I guess alleged negligence on the city's part. Do we, as the public, have any say in what the city gets to spend on that litigation, per se? Is the question I'm asking may not be clear, but
Yeah, it's a great question. And the answer is there is transparency through the Public Information Act. If somebody wants to ask for those invoices, they can, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does the public get to say, stop spending money on that litigation? No, that's what you elected your city council for.
Mm-hmm.
So the only ability you have to control that is to change your city council.
Is there any precedence ever on
No.
okay. All right.
Is
No,
there?
there's not. And if you want to be cynical, it's because lawyers help write this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of figured that.
But
when
not
I
being
wrote that comment
cynical,
out, yeah.
not being cynical, I will tell you, putting a cap on your attorney's fees is a great way to lose every lawsuit you ever get dragged into.
Well, I didn't necessarily mean a cap, but at a certain point where it becomes the public becomes involved. Like we exceed $5 million, it
Yeah.
has to go for a vote or something like that.
Yeah,
Something along
and
those
that
lines.
means that in a lawsuit that is important enough that we spent $5 million on, suddenly we're going to say, Uncle, we give up. Go ahead and do whatever you want to us because.
That's a valid point.
Is there a max that, like, I don't know, whether through state law or just in general, that a city will pay out in a lawsuit?
There is, yes. It depends on the type of lawsuit, so like property claim versus personal injury versus, and there's different caps for each of those. Worst case scenario, a single incident adds up to about $750,000. All right. So if you have a single vehicle accident where somebody drives a fire truck into a building, the building falls down and a bunch of people die, a single incident, $750,000. That's
The
about
max
the
the
cap.
city will pay out, not
Yeah.
to the person, not including
And so
fees.
when I'm writing contracts for cities, and every other attorney I know does this as well, we always require $1 million insurance policy for anybody doing work on behalf of the
But
city.
it's per
occurrence.
per suit, not
Yeah.
or per
Per
incident.
occurrence, per incident, right?
Okay.
And the reason we require $1 million is because insurance carriers don't sell $750,000 increments. They sell it at 500 or $1 million.
Right.
And so we just all require, if you read any contract from just about any city across the state, it says you're going to carry $1 million insurance policy and you're going to waive subrogation so that if you do something and we get sued, we get to go after your insurance to pay our liability.
And you're saying that when pointing like you would have counsel each hold $1 million policy for?
No, I would say what I'm talking about is like we just hired
and errors or something,
we hired a company just a week or two ago to
Oh, you're
design
talking
a
just a
fire
general
station.
liability like to a subcontractor?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
They all have $1
Gotcha.
million policies.
Gotcha. I thought when you were putting up here, I was like, oh, so I didn't know. Maybe
Yeah,
we do
no,
require,
not
we should
individual
require
counsel.
that. You know, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm
Put
talking
that in
about
charter
contracts.
that they need to have.
So it's capped at $750,000 for personal injury. Now there are certainly suits that can result in more damages to that. You can get into, I don't know, maybe a federal elections lawsuit. You might.
It
be
just
able to-
depends on what
right?
all happened.
Yeah, but your typical lawsuits for property damage, personal injury, that kind of stuff, there is a cap.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, I don't require any action. It was more of a question of ignorance, I guess. So now that
Okay.
I understand, it's all
No action.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Bonds of the city manager, city secretary, and financial officer. Add and maintain. She's not here tonight. Does anybody know what this question's about? So this section says that there should be a bond payable to the city for that the city manager, the city secretary, and the finance officer each have to execute a bond. That's fairly common. It's a little old-fashioned, but it is fairly common still in city charters. I don't have a problem with the way the charter itself is written right now, and I don't know what she wanted us to talk about.
That was all her comment said.
Yeah. So why don't we, do y'all want to table this and let her bring it up when she's here next time?
Yes.
Okay. Annual audit is the next comment. Audit and examination of city books and accounts. Elise, add notice for each hearing shall be published on the website. We've already kind of added that out. Addressed that elsewhere, I think.
Oh, yeah, I think so. What did I have on there?
And it just says.
Oh, for the
annual audit.
notices, right.
For the notices, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we already did that one later.
Okay.
Some of these I had looked at prior.
Then within that same comment, at least, I think these are things that you had that we didn't know where to put.
Oh, this goes back to from,
Our PD department doesn't have fitness test?
Well, let's take them up in order.
Sorry.
Before we get to, I know you jumped ahead on me.
My bad.
That's the sexy one on the
Jumped
list.
out.
We'll come back to that one.
Sorry.
Add something to the charter that allows more transparency and make it easier for citizens to get information requested without charging a fee.
oh, okay, this is from that we had from last meeting,
Yeah.
but we moved it to this section.
Yeah. So
Okay.
under state law, the Public Information Act says that the public can request any public information, any information of the city that's not otherwise confidential. There's a list of like 76 exceptions to that general statement, but there are costs associated with that. It's 10 cents per page if somebody wants something printed out. They can avoid that cost by requesting it to be delivered to them electronically. There's no charge for electronic copies.
Really?
Really?
Why does
I
anybody
don't know
pay
if
for
people
hard
have been
copies?
offered that. A lot of this is, I
Pay
think
for
all
the
of
cost
these
of
these were from citizens, I think
Yeah.
mostly, so
Yeah.
I won't be able to go into a lot of detail, it's just what was given to me. But
That's
I
okay.
think that,
If you feel the need to release information without charging a fee, you are welcome to do that. And it would just say, the city shall respond to Public Information Act requests without charging the requester any fees. I don't know that I would go that broad because there are situations, what we think of it, or the terminology is manipulation of data. I have seen cities that changed computer systems off of old computers that had custom software, and then somebody might ask for a copy of a water bill from the 1970s. We still have that information, but it's on a computer system we can't access anymore.
Right.
If you said without fee, you'd have to pay a programmer to redo that. And so I would not recommend changing what's in state law. State law has very low fees associated with stuff. It's 10 cents per page, $15 an hour for labor.
Haven't we already had an issue in the city of like the city getting hemmed up in state court for overcharging somebody for information and paper?
If it is an overcharge, you can line up in state court. All under state law, you don't need to put it in your charter.
Try.
All right.
and then
So-
electronic is free.
And electronic is free.
Now, if does that include like cam video?
So, electronic is free is an overgeneralization. There are several situations where electronic data can be charged. If it requires
that, right?
storage media like that, then
If
I
it goes
would-
on that act, I don't know, I think there's a program they send it on or something.
Yeah, Axon. It could be charges for it if I have to put it on a flash drive, I can charge you for the flash drive. right?
Unless
But
I
it's
don't
just
know.
a-
Can I
but
provide
it can
my
be-
own though to avoid these costs? Like, is there ways around that?
IT directors don't like that because that's a major cybersecurity risk, but possibly,
So, but
okay?
if it's emailed over, typically there's no charge if it can be.
Typically, yes. Now, the place you can still be charged for it is, let's say you've requested 100 pages, and on 60 of those pages, I need to go in and cross off somebody's personal
gotcha.
cell phone number.
If they're
So you might
redacting.
still be charged the labor for redacting that information. So it's a generalization to say
Gotcha.
electronically it's free. But
Gotcha. No, this is good to know because I know how to answer everything someone asks now.
yeah, usually the fees are very, very low. I'll tell you, I had a request that was 3 bankers boxes. Well, it was front and back printed 2 bankers boxes worth of documents. It was about $700 for them to get those records released after we had reviewed every single page in there, redacted every page in there.
Gotcha.
There was a lot of labor that went into that, and you go, we only got $700 for that. We've been working on it for a week,
Yeah,
so
gotcha.
it's very, very affordable in my mind.
Yeah.
Okay, the second comment on here is if they break their oath to the Constitution, they immediately lose qualified immunity. We can't
That's a
do
state-
that.
Isn't that state law anyways?
That is
State.
state
Okay.
law, and so there's nothing we can do about that.
Okay.
Yearly physical fitness agility test, I would not put that at a charter level decision.
Okay.
Okay, I would leave that up to the city manager and the police chief to make that kind of decision. If there are issues with police officers not being able to do their job, then you should hold the police chief accountable for that.
You're telling me cops don't have a PT test?
In a lot of cities, they did.
Oh, okay. I just assumed they did.
To be honest, it's more common among fire departments than it is among police departments. Fire departments
I would just
are,
say both, they're
Yeah.
both emergency responders.
yeah. Is there something that we can put in the charter to make the website more friendly and transparent? I think we've been working on that throughout. Can we say that a person cannot be related to or have any affiliation to members of council? I think that probably, maybe that was tied to the city manager or the city secretary or something like that.
That would fall under typically the nepotism.
Nepotism would already prevent
We
some of
already talked
that.
about that too, it has to be state, not what the
Right,
charter says.
nepotism is limited by state law as well, right? And then that last one is mine, just had to do with rearranging stuff. That 4, 5, and 6 is what we were doing tonight. That completes where we wanted to get through tonight. Big deep breath. Questions, comments, concerns? Madam Chair?
Anyone have anything?
Please make note of the reschedule notice that was put at your seat. Please update your calendars accordingly. Because of all the budget workshops that are happening, we got bumped.
All
I
right,
won't
this
be able to
meeting
attend
is,
that one.
huh?
To let you know now, I will not be able to attend
Okay.
on the 4th.
Okay,
Indeed.
I'd like them very clear,
Thank you.
precise.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, let her check on.
on.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.